Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Cerberus at the Improv. I am Payman Ascari. I'm joined by my co-host, Mr. Timothy Knight. Tim, how are you doing today, sir?
It's a good day today. I'm happy to be here, and this weekend is Father's Day, and that's really great.
It's Father. Oh, I guess I got another phone call to me.
Tomorrow.
Wasn't it just Mother's Day?
Well, yes.
Can't they just smush it all together? I mean, this is 2025.
That's what the woke are doing.
I was going to say intersectionalism will do that for you. Yeah, you could be a birthing parent, and it doesn't matter about what biology you were born with. Maybe they just mixed you up in manufacture.
Parent Day,
birthing day. I don't know. Taxpayer Day.
Andre, how are you doing?
You're sounding like liberal now.
Somebody can't see it, but my elbows are up.
Somebody hack your brain.
Yeah. I get my elbows in the screen.
We're off to a good start. Our elbows are up. The economy
That's
will be
more
fine.
exercise than I wanted this week.
How are things going, Andre? You still got you're a farmer or something? You still dealing with the garden?
No. I'm more calm now, but it's still winter. So I think it's climate change again. 25 years ago, it was global warming. When they understood that it didn't work, it became climate change. Now they will go back to ice age. So anyway, it will be a crisis. One crisis always chases another. So I'm waiting, anticipating.
On the issue,
some dictator in Africa, they have what they call cold room. It's like a very, very big ballroom where they have air conditioning. It's 8-9 degrees because the woman or the wife of those dictators, they have about 25 fur coat, and they like to wear it inside. And that's a fact.
Nothing of that story made sense, Tim. That's so many questions.
Reminds me of the Filipino president and his wife, and she had thousands and thousands of pairs of shoes. So the country is in abject poverty and on the edge of civil war, and she's spending all of her money on expensive shoes.
No, the money of the people on expensive shoes.
Right, not her money.
This is more my ignorance, but I'm like, why would you need fur coats in Africa? Like skis.
Why not?
Well, and by 2035, we'll be asking the questions: why do you need a gas vehicle? Where you're going? Where do you think you're going anyway in your 15-minute city with a gas vehicle?
Why do you need privacy?
You will not have to ask. You will just have to shut down the car.
Why do you need 2 pairs of shoes? You don't need 2 pairs of shoes. The people have determined that you can do today barefoot.
You can.
If you lost a leg in the war, you need only one shoe.
You need only.
Yeah. You'll walk less. You'll breathe less CO2 out.
And you'll be raised up as a good citizen of the people, that's sacrificing the one leg for the cause, and now only requiring one shoe.
And the government will be gracious enough to give you a cane to lean on, a crutch.
Yeah. A cane or a maid.
Well, yeah,
maid. Yeah. This is getting bad. Move on.
I guess just before we get started, Barbara, welcome. Kirk, Mr. Reese, welcome. Good afternoon. How's civilization? We'll find out. Hopefully you'll still be here.
With civilization.
Yeah, it's a better point. Okay, let me bring up what we're going to go over today before jumping into it. So this sort of chaos in the parliament, when parliament was prorogued, it's supposed to be custom and tradition that you're not supposed to be able to spend money, like there's no legislature, but the governor general released a whole bunch of money to Carney, who probably then used it to bribe people. That's what this one was here. And now Carney is talking about rearming Europe, which is like, it boggles my mind. I think his strategy is, if he says something that's completely nonsensical, Payman, Tim, and Andre, they're going to spend, hours trying to figure out what the hell he's thinking. So we're not making any progress. So yeah, like what's going on? I don't know, Andre. Like, do we even have a country? Is this a full clown show?
No, no, that's what I say. And you know, I was telling you, I'm reading the Bill C2 about national security. You know, the fact that you can open mail of people, and there's a lot of things in this bill. It's 142 pages, and they always talk about the Privy Council. And in the bill, it's always the Privy Council of the King. It's not the Privy Council of the Prime Minister or the Cabinet. So, in my opinion, Canada does not exist. You know, it's that concept, de facto or de jure. De facto, it means that I invade the territory of Tim. It's de facto. De jure, it is, you know, legal. So you have a difference. And I think that in Canada now we're discovering maybe what people were suspecting in the 60s when Trudeau arrived, and with the when he brought back the Constitution, quote unquote. So I have the feeling that the show is good because it worked for 60, 70 years, but maybe it worked more long than we thought. Tim always mentioned Newfoundland arriving very late in the Constitution, or you know, the idea that we have of Canada. The idea we have of Canada is something. If you think about the lower Canada, which was French, and the higher Canada, and after the conquest 1759, we had a certain idea with the Confederation. But did the country really work? Until 1972, it seems that it was working. Except you can forget the October crisis, 1972. 1972, we start to have deficit. And we start to have a debt that is growing exponentially. So we cannot say that we are sovereign if we are subject to this level of debt. I think what is happening now, the parliament it's not even efficient. It's not working. I saw a small clip today of what I call journalists, quote unquote, from Le Journal Le Devoir in Quebec, which is a left wing that was created by a nationalist at the time. But he was in Ottawa yesterday, and he was saying the MPs that are coming out of the House, they don't stop, they don't answer to the question of the journalists. I don't know if you saw the small struggle between Rebel News and the accreditation for the G7 summit. Now, as soon as Relevant said we will sue you and we will bring the government to court, Carney backed down. So I think the new leadership of the government is an authoritarian leadership. It was like this before. Now it will be more official.
Go ahead, Tim.
I was thinking about the term confederacy, that when the French were first pushing through Upper Canada and making relationships, they actually had a confederation with the Iroquois or the Algonquin.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Right?
Algonquin.
Yeah. And
you had
and
three native tribes.
Yep, and that was an official legal confederation agreement. And then the British come in later to what was then Upper Canada, although it was basically Ontario, and they also had confederation with. See, I keep getting the Algonquin and the Iroquois reversed.
It's the Iroquois, what they call it in the United States, Mohawk.
Right.
The Mohawks.
Yeah. And those in the Lake Ontario region were in themselves called a confederation of the Six or something like that. So these relationships pre-existed. So we talk about identity for a moment and our current struggle with identity. We had two very clear identities hundreds of years ago, prior even to the Hudson's Bay Company's exploration, even before the voyageurs and moving into the Manitoba or Rupert's Land, even before that, two very distinct, not distinct because they were French with Native peoples and English with Native peoples, and they chose those two tribes because they were at odds with each other. So basically the British being the British, the French being the French, but they had distinct, clear, legal, represented relationships called confederacies. And I just find it interesting that that is not taught today. So the moving forward to the concept of the Constitution being patriated or brought to Canadian shores, Canada's official name is the Dominion of Canada. It's not Canada, the Dominion of Canada. So the name itself hints to our vassal position in the Commonwealth of Nations under the British Crown. And if indeed, as we've seen since the COVID madness, that our Constitution can be run roughshod and the British Privy Council says nothing, and the British Parliament says nothing, the House of Lords says nothing, and the Crown says nothing, then what value does that document really have?
Well, it's interesting what you're mentioning, Tim, because the Constitution is there. We have the document, but the government violated. You mentioned the Lord in Great Britain. Carney now was with Starmer, and like you said, I don't call them prime minister. I call them vassals of the king. And why I say this is because when we think about what is happening now with the Privy Council, I have to thank Matthew Herod, because when we had a discussion together, I started to understand what was the Privy Council. Before that, I had no idea what it was, I knew the expression, but I didn't know the power of this organization. And what we're seeing now, it's like the authoritarian style of Carney, not answering to journalists, naming Michael Sabia as the chief, the CEO. He will be a chief representative of the cabinet. So with Marc-André Blanchard, who's from the Liberal Party, and he's a lobbyist, and he was, Sabia was from the Caisse de dépôt et placement du Québec. He was the CEO. The Quebec pension plan. Then he just resigned from being the CEO of Hydro-Québec to be appointed in the cabinet of Mark Carney. He's a globalist. He doesn't hide it. He's a globalist. So, and the global agenda of Mark Carney with banning gas car 2035 in Quebec, we were the government of Legault was talking about this 3 years ago. And now they're starting to back down because car manufacturers, they say the demand is not there. So the idea, the agenda is still there. It's still very powerful. And in my opinion, when you mention the history, you mentioned this confederation. It was 1701. I discovered that recently. It was a peace, a truce, or a peace between Native community and the French government at the time. Yeah. So yes, and then you had the war between Great Britain and France on the
Napoleon,
land of Canada. So we had this precedent in Canada with the confederation. Then, like they say, the shit hit the fan, and we have a new era. The era of Carney will be more authoritarian. Trudeau was trying to seduce people with his style, and how he was with people with the selfie style. Did you see Carney take selfie with people? He's not the man of the people.
Well, Carney's
he
not.
Will be the authority.
He doesn't have charisma. Andre, let's go back in time. You used 1972. So our budget exploded, our deficits, they grew in 74. But I've been told, and I want your opinion, no offense, but you're a little bit older than me, and I'm not saying you were alive in 72 or politically involved, but 72, you had an NDP coalition with the Liberals, and that's when they pressured Pierre Elliott Trudeau with his minority government to just start blowing up the welfare state, and that's when we saw the beginning of inflation. How much is that true? How much is that is just people who hate the NDP?
Well, the NDP, you know, I have to refer to Arnold Eno when he talks about what's his name?
Oh, that jackass! Come on, the healthcare guy.
No. The NDP, the 1957 when
Tommy Douglas.
Tommy Douglas. He refers to Tommy Douglas and the idea of new democratic party. Democratic being the party of the people, the party of one voice, and the party of workers. We see the same phenomenon in France. The left has dropped the worker to mutate into an ideology, defending what we call minority. So my idea in 1972, maybe the NDP at the time was still trying to defend workers, but the manipulation of minority pushed them to have, I would say, marriage of reason between the NDP and the Liberal. And we saw, I can refer to the Bloc, 1993. The Bloc is a split between the Conservative, who left the Conservative Party to create the Bloc. So there's always a section of a party that will do secession just because they do not agree with the policy.
I get what you're saying. They had the road to hell is paved with good intentions, and the NDP genuinely wanted to help the working class. What I'm saying is the way that they did it put us into this debt trap that we're in now.
I think so.
I don't think the NDP was interested in helping the working class. I think the NDP was well infiltrated by the Communist Manifesto by that time. The use of the word Democrat is camouflage.
I think you're right, Tim. No, I think he's right because, you know, at the time we had in Canada and in Quebec, but in Canada, we had a Communist Party. We had a Marxist-Leninist party, and we had a New Democratic Party, and they were quite close with the ideology of the left. Everybody has equal rights. We can talk about rights and privilege after. Everybody should have a decent life. That was 1972. In 1972, women were not a labor force. It started a little bit after, more intensively. So I think that they were pushing this agenda of equality, which became after an ideology. That is, nobody will disagree that people should have equal opportunities, but will we all become doctors or engineers or driller or nurse? No, it goes with, you know, talent, skills, the type of education you have, your parents. So I have the feeling that it started to decay 1972 with the debt, especially with the debt. You have debt, you're not sovereign. And that's why I would say Canada is not a sovereign country. But which country is? Which country does not have debt today?
Take the words out of my mouth. You beat me to it. Damn it.
It's because I read in your mind.
I'm Irish Newfoundlander, so I'm culturally forbidden for saying bad things about the Holy See, because otherwise I'm absolutely going to hell. So, yeah, I find it interesting that it was Canada in North America legislated the vote to women in the 20s, I think it was, but it wasn't until, like you say, 72, around 5 years after Berkeley, right? So the late 60s, around that period of time, 5 years, half a generation before women were aggressively encouraged to enter into the 9-to-5 white collar workspace. Right. Well, so that was in the early 70s, and that's thanks to shows like Mary Tyler Moore.
Yeah, and you refer to 9 to 5, Dolly Parton. Working 9 to 5.
Right? And
that was to target women.
I've never heard that song, Andre. Can you sing the whole thing for us?
Not a chance. Not a chance. We will lose 95.
Get up and dance as well.
I tried to sing yesterday. I tried to sing yesterday to my wife, and she put a pillow on my face.
So you took the pillow off?
No, she put it on. But you're right. You're right about the working force, the labor force, and that was 1963, the assassination of Kennedy. But after that, the Vietnam War, the Vietnam manifestation in the White House, the minorities that are starting to protest. What we're seeing now south of the border in Los Angeles, huh? It's not a new concept.
No, everything's a circle.
Let me
absolutely everything.
Speaking of circles, I'm going to circle back to one thing. The NDP, before leaving this, I was being very generous to them in '72 when I said, given the Workers' Party, they started as the Cooperative Commonwealth Federation, and in my opinion, they were very Marxist, like they were anti-property rights. How do you guys see it, Tim? Am I right in that?
And they were a Canadian version of Bolshevism, right? Post 1917, 1908-ish Russia. And a lot of that really, really bad dark news was not getting to the West, if at all, because news traveled differently back then, and newspapers could control the story very, very easily back then. The prairies, in spite of most of them escaping, right? Prussia, White Russia, Red, escaping all of that oppression, escaping that culture. That type of culture was something that's the only thing they knew for 200-300 years. So they escape over into the prairies in Canada, where you've got one farm every 20 square miles. They maintain their view of the East in Canada. So that as more information comes available to them, as the newspapers improve, as the radio comes in, then the information that they keep is information that is already familiar to them. It's just cultural. That's cultural. So then out of the prairies, the CCF is born because it resonates with the people who are already there in the language they already understand. So the idea of shared property, well, welcome to serfdom, right? That's the gender. So that was not foreign to them. But the idea that we could control this, we could manage this, we are better than what was before, that's what gave the CCF the legs it needed in the prairies to step into the national arena as a political agent. So rebranding into the NDP is when that happens, the West is already realizing just how bad it is behind the Iron Curtain. So the CCF seeks to differentiate itself from that ideology. The new Democratic Party, the new democracy, is the Cold War language of the CCCTP. I use 4 C's, right? Is that language. So by the time you get to Broadbent, right, now you're into the height of the Cold War, and it is assumed that there will be this Orange Party here forever, and they are the part. So they position themselves to be for the workers, because the Conservatives were for the businessmen, and the Liberals were for the academic. So there was a hole in the marketplace for the worker and for the union. And that's what they filled. And that language worked in Ireland, right? Between the 2 world wars, because Ireland did not participate. And it was because of the Union trouble. Churchill was often running covert ops in Ireland to keep an eye on communist agitators during the war, right? And so that was happening over here as well. So
to keep an eye on to inform them,
right? A little bit of both, right? Because sometimes I want to be a double agent myself, right? So this is this somehow becomes my identity when I'm a teenager in my by the time I was in my 20s, I didn't care anymore about politics anyway. But in my teen years, this is what I was aware of, because at that time, our high school actually taught civics program, had a civics curriculum, right? So we even did a mock parliament, and we had and all of this stuff. So when you get out of the 80s, that's all been removed from the education system. So, and politically, you have three clean lines: the academics, the union, and the businesses. And it has been that way since Diefenbaker.
Yes, but you know what happened now since the last 50, 60 years? You have the concept of revolving door. They cross the floor. It's like you're in the private sector. You run for office. You're elected. You spend 2 terms sitting in the house. Then you go out. You have full pension, and you are rehired as a lobbyist. I want to react to what you were saying about the Communist Party, of what happened behind the Iron Curtain. Yes, you're right. People who were arriving. Immigration, which was not mass immigration, people who were arriving and they were leaving East European country. They were arriving in a country where, especially in the prairies, they were arriving in a place where you have a lot of land, your neighbors are far, laws are not too restrictive. So a little bit like United States, settlers that arrive here. It's a wild environment, but there's a lot of possibility. There's lots of opportunities. It has shrunk over the year. And I could say in the last 50, 60 years, the idea of freedom that we have is shrinking much faster today because we have this authoritarian structure. You mentioned communism or Marxism. Yes, the ideas are the same. In the 1920s, with Lenin and Trotsky, it was the dictator of the proletarian dictator. We will destroy capitalism and we will make communism, but it's a work in progress. We will never see the outcome of it. And I will go again and refer to Orwell and Animal Farm. You have this tendency of an elite, a bureaucracy, an elite, that will lead the people, the flock, if you want to use the expression, but they're blind. They're blind, and they follow their own interest. So I think there was a political shift in the 50s and 60s after the war, with industrialization, the baby boom, and everybody could have a house. It was quite new in North America, if you just take Canada and United States. Then after that, we had the first oil crisis, 1973, I think, the abandon of the gold standard. It accelerated, and people start to take their position. The NDP was not different. I think that they were opportunists. Look at the unions today. The unions, and we can talk about the native tribe, with the chief of those tribes, how they are contempt toward people. I will not use the word corrupt. They're contempt. They're arrogant. They don't answer. They are completely disconnected from reality. That's what we're seeing now at many levels: municipal level, provincial level, in unions, in corporation. It's everywhere. How do we get out of that? I don't know. I think we have to start to be self-aware of what is happening.
Just, I'm going to shift gears. Sue mentioned something. The Europe rearmament program will bankrupt us, and we'll be signed by Carney this month. No consult, no budget.
There is absolutely a budget.
Well, not that they're sharing with us, but the question remains is, like, Tim, you alluded to that. No, Andre, you said this. Trudeau was doing politics by selfie, like with the people. She's trying to relate to the people. Carney is more authoritarian. He has no interest in the people. But it feels like not only is there no checks and balances, there's no democracy. There is no political system anymore. This feels like we're subjects now. Like Genghis Khan has come in, he's taken over, and he's ruling by decree.
Well, think about think about Soviet Union and why I make this reference is think about the Soviet Union. The authoritarian style never left Russia. Russia, for example, is an industrial state, and their GDP is based on the industry. So they are not financialized like Canada. And what we will see with Carney, he will complete the cycle of deindustrialize the country or deindustrialize people who will not follow the net zero agenda. And he will say, if you follow the net zero agenda, let's say Brookfield and all the housing, modular housing, if you follow this, we will help you. If you don't follow this, we will punish you and we will bankrupt you. And that's the type of authority that will come from the top. And, in Soviet Union, they were doing exactly the same thing. When they started in 1920, the dekulakization of farm, they were stealing farm from farmer. And it was a total disaster for 15 years, up to the point that Stalin had to back off. He had to... it is... When you read, you understand he had to back off. So in Canada, what they're doing now, they're imposing a model top-down, and they say, we don't answer question anymore. It's not a question. We will not answer. This is what will happen. Timothy is right. They have a budget, but it's a budget. It is discretionary. They don't have to tell you. It's not your business. That's the real message.
Let's go to Tim.
Sue is right. The EU, not Europe, but the EC is bankrupt. And it's bankrupt because it's not a really large piece of land. You can fit all of the European Union inside the Canadian prairies. It's not a really big piece of land. And it's already been run roughshod for resources for 2,000 years. So one of the reasons for the initial expansion of the major powers in Europe was for resources. It was for resources. So they've been looking for external injections, right? Trade, skills, labor, etc., for 500 years. So then these disastrous policies, I haven't seen the document, but I don't doubt it. A 60-page European EC document or EU trade document, 60-page document to manage the trade of, I think it was cauliflower. 60 pages to determine how cauliflower is traded in the European in Europe. It's bonkers, right? So it's bureaucracy. You create it's the make work project to justify your existence. The European Union is at a leadership level is effectively a subcontinent of bureaucrats, and so producing nothing and needing everything. So to reach into Canada via the City of London, via the Crown, via Carney, and Carney's not the only one. He just happens to be, he's the current manager assigned to the outpost in order to get this garrison running again. So let's just bring it back into like 400-year-old language, right? So when Trump jokes and calls Trudeau the governor of Canada, he's not wrong, because Carney is exactly that right now, the governor of Canada. And so as the governor of Canada, he'll have his cabal of direct leadership as a governor, and everybody underneath of him will do what they're told and take their paycheck and sign their name when they need it to be signed and shut their mouths. And the 343 members of parliament are satisfied to do that. Everything else is during.
Well, you talk about being vassal payment. Could you bring back the two comments of Sue? Because when she's referring to the European Union, and I think this one, but the one before, and Tim is this right. No, the other one. Tim mentioned, the difference between the European Union and the European Commission. Yeah. When she talks about Ursula needs more cash, and she referred to Christine Anderson, who was on her space, I think, or she will, I'm not sure. Christine Anderson, she's trying to fight for Europe, or maybe for sovereignty of the nation, France, Germany, Italy, but it's a question of energy. Now we will have what? They're making jokes about the 51 state G7 summit. I don't know if you saw this. It's not the Alberta, Canada summit. It's what, Canasis? I don't remember what it's on a native reserve.
Canasis in Alberta, yeah.
Yes. So what is funny is when you look at this, you say, wait a second, the G7. You think Xi Jinping, you think Vladimir Putin, what? The G what? It has no power anymore, no power. They have a paper, 5% of the GDP for NATO, but they're losing everywhere. Everywhere. They don't have any energy. And in Europe, and she's right, when she says that Ursula von der Leyen, she sucks the blood of Germany. Don't forget that Ursula von der Leyen, she's German, and it was a disaster when she was a minister in the Bundestag. That's why they named her president of the European Commission. Not like you just follow the history. Kaja Kallas, Annalena Baerbock, now that she's a senior advisor for the United Nations. They do a very good job of destroying nation, and after that they are promoted. What is happening in Europe?
Sounds like DEI.
Well, yes, it's DEI. But you know what's happening with Europe and Canada? It's the meeting of the losers. They are losers. They're all losers, and they try to pinpoint their responsibility to citizen, but they are loser. Carney is a loser. That's end of the game.
Let me share my. Here's what I think is happening. I've said this on the show before. This concept of financialization. I think the globalists, they're getting to the last level where they want to completely move all the industry from the beautiful West to the ugly, dirty global South. They will be the bankers, and there's going to be all these little people running around known as people, citizens, and the way to square that circle is with UBI. So we'll let them live for a little while. Eventually, we'll kill them off with MAID or vaccines or whatever. But for the time being, we're the bank, the industrial centers, all those third world countries, and these peasants, if we need them, we'll give them UBI.
That's the plan. Now, don't forget the Bilderberg meeting is now, and on the agenda. No, it is for this week, and on the agenda, one of the topic that they will discuss is depopulation. It's on the agenda. They don't hide it. They never hide their goals. And what you're mentioning, yes, shifting the industries where they have energy. Because maybe that's why Alberta will be interesting. You know, the struggle for sovereignty of Alberta. I don't have doubts about the needs of a movement like that. Where I have doubts or concern is how the Crown will react if there is a referendum that is positive. If they say
let me jump in, and then I'll throw it to Tim. That's the next topic we wanted to bring up. We got Alberta separation after the election. It's Alberta independence. We have now Dallas Brodie starts the OneBC party. It's a populist party in BC. And then anybody else stuck in the middle is they're trying to get the hell out of Dodge, and they're leaving Canada. What do you think is the way forward, Tim? What are your thoughts?
In human resource theory, modern human resource, postmodern, post-national human resource, I keep adding posts, post-apocalyptic human resource theory, humans are the resource. Now, this is me theorizing for a moment.
Is it dispendable?
Made in Canada, MAID. Right? So if I'm going to crash the complete energy-driven model of manufacture and industry by insisting on solar panels everywhere, wind props everywhere, ocean, wave generators everywhere, They all have a legitimate place somewhere, but they are by no means a replacement technology. They are augment, but not replacement. And the end result is you no longer have all your gas machines, your engines or motors or machines. You no longer have your diesel machines. You've made all of these fuels. You made them illegal or obsoleted or closed it, whatever. So then everything else collapses. So you're trying to prop up this electrical field. You're trying to prop up this grid. Everything else collapses. So where have you got yourself to? Human labor. So if I reduce the entire population of the planet by X, and I no longer have liquid fuel and I no longer have electrical energy because I've managed to destroy all of it, well, I'm not going to need it if I'm only going to have X couple billion people dispersed all around the world. And I take the culture that we have habitually taken advantage of below the equator, right? And the ones up, this is all INGSOC. This is all 1984. It's just instead of where 1984 was 3 great big mega organizations across the 7 continents, we're basically turning it into northern hemisphere, southern hemisphere, and China will be jammed over on the side somewhere. Maybe they'll run the whole show, maybe they won't, but it's all 1984 language. It just split across 2 hemispheres to where in 1984, where are all the machines? On the war front. All the time, right? So, and if I'm going to be king of the world, I mean, I'm satisfied with king of Canada, but if I'm going to be king of the world, I don't want the next generation, to be able to rise up against me. I must absolutely destroy all capacity for technological development and reduce their literacy, reduce their will to live, regarding whether you're putting it in the water or in the sky or in the food or whatever, doesn't matter. So if you're literally trying to create that world, then you must go all in. And why they're not doing it fast, because I would just be Machiavellian, right? Could create a legitimate world-eating virus and just let it go. Because if I'm the top, 300 families or whatever they say are hiding up there in the upper echelons whose feet never touch asphalt type of thing, then there's enough families that will be left over. So let the virus kill some of them off too. Well, why not, right? Eat the rich. If I'm rich, I don't mind with the other rich getting eat. I'll take what's left over, right? Eat what you kill, right? So in my view, even the Green New Deal is a distraction, because the end technological result of we've already gone over the falls. We agree. We said this last show. We've already gone over the falls. So have we cleared the falls enough to avoid what's it called? Cataphract at the bottom? Have we cleared it enough? Right? I'd be more efficient. I cannot possibly be efficient. That's not in my nature. So or are we going to get caught in the cataphract? That's the question, right? So knowing that the world leadership is hell bent on putting us under their heel, and like it said in the book 1984, the boot against the neck of the people forever. And that's pure Marxism. Marxism says, I'm going to forget the words now, revolutionary, counter-revolutionary becomes the revolutionary, become the counter, forever and ever and ever, endless revolution. So how do we the question is not what do we think is coming, and we can theorize that all day long. The question is, what are we going to do right now? What are we going to do about it right now? Right? And the majority of Canadians anyway, and by majority I mean like 80%, are satisfied to just go to their job, let the government take 2/3 of their paycheck through various means, treat them poorly in their schools, treat them poorly in their businesses, treat them poorly in their unions, treat them poorly in their insurance, health insurance or car insurance. All the liability in Canada is amazingly ridiculous. Are we going to continue to permit that or not? That's really what I'm interested in. Right. What I'm really interested in is we can theorize and chat all day long. Alberta can talk about secession all day long. The Crown will not permit it. The Crown will not permit Alberta to leave, period. And Danielle Smith leans in favor of the Crown because she knows what side her bread is buttered on.
Andre, I forget the question.
I cannot agree more with Tim in a sense that when you refer to the movement in Alberta, and I can compare it with the movement in Quebec, the movement in Quebec was infiltrated. And it is interesting because even if you have 60% of the population in Alberta, I will not talk about 51%, I will 50 plus 1, what we call a majority. I would say, let's say you have a very good outcome of the vote, let's say 65% of the population, you will still have opposition within the province, and it will be a long process because you call this secession. It is something, and you will have to negotiate with the king. Do you negotiate with the king? The king will say, hey, you peasant, go back to your village. And we don't see, but can the king send his army? I'm not sure the king can send the Canadian army. When there was the Yellow Vest movement in 2018 in France, it was not the National Guard that was intervening in Paris. It was the United Nations Guard. They had no label. And it was quite funny because all the people who were the officers who were there, they were coming from different countries. It's the United Nations, what they call blue helmet.
Yeah.
So you can imagine it's not difficult to shoot people if you don't know them. It's a little bit more difficult if you're going in a manifestation and you have to shoot your neighbor, your friend, relatives, and you see this on the news. And especially today we have, instant news. The news is faster than the event. So you can create a narrative that can be completely different. We saw it with the RCMP, and we saw it in Ottawa, how they arrived and they were held by the Quebec police force. So the process can be very long, very painful. I think it is important because at least this shows awareness. It shows people are waking up. And we saw what happened last week in Los Angeles, how it was horrible. We have to be able to stay rational. This is the most difficult time for Canada because if we're not, we will start to eat each other, fight each other, instead of focusing on the real causes, the root causes of the problem, which is this agenda that wants to deprive people. I want to say to Tim, maybe you read my essay, Cowards, Traitors, and Collaborators, because I'm referring to windmill and solar panel, and I can just make a small reference to what Elizabeth May said today. She said, "Oh, there's a bishop who's coming, and she will bless." I think it's the bishop, a woman bishop who wears LGBT rainbow color. She says she's coming to bless the solar panel. What did you take, Elizabeth May, to say something stupid like this?
That's a lot of martinis.
Well, a lot of martinis, but solar panel, windmill, they are out what we call alternative energy, and they pollute. That's the first thing. The second thing, it is if you reduce the population by 6 billion people and you have only 500 million people, and you can sacrifice, like Tim said, you can sacrifice some noble family, some rich, just to appease the peasant. If you have 500 million people, it's okay to have windmill and solar panel because you don't have this amount of energy. You don't need this amount of energy. You can stay in your 15-minute city. You will be provided with everything. The bugs will arrive. They will be fresh, or it can work. The problem is that those psychopaths, they think that it can work, and they continue in their lunacy. If people wake up, or they start to wake up, because the 5 years from now, the world will be completely different. We will not recognize it. And Tim is right. We have to act now. We don't have time anymore.
We don't have time anymore.
You use the word psychopaths. I think a more accurate phrase would be mental illness. Ever since the election's over,
psychopathy is a mental illness. Huh?
It's a well, sure, but I mean, like,
it is.
They're mentally ill. So these, ever since the election, I've been meeting with people, and we're having long conversations face to face. These are ordinary voters, and they're very scared of what's happening, and they're starting to panic. And I met with one guy, and he said, everybody in West Vancouver, they're mentally ill. Like, these liberals are mentally ill. And we looked around this coffee shop. I bought orange juice, Americano, and a croque monsieur, $40. And you're looking around. There's all these people with Louis Vuitton bags. All these women that they have nothing else to do. They just meet with all other middle-aged wives, and they're having overpriced coffee. Absolutely clueless, unaware of this, rearming Europe. They're unaware of what a prorogue even means. And these are the liberals these are the elbows up liberals that voted for Carney.
So I need to interject. This is the Roaring 20s 100 years later.
There you go. Yeah.
We saw it in after the First World War. The 20s in Paris, and in Germany it was the Weimar Republic. How the country that was completely destroyed, industrially speaking, was trying to rebuild, but it was through perversion. It was incredible. The Weimar Republic was one of the most pervert time from 1918 until 1929, when the Depression arrived. What they call en français les années 20, les années folles, the years 20, the crazy years, where everybody the war was finished, the Germans were defeated, and then arrived the Depression. And what Tim is mentioning is important. That's
a crisis response. That's
exactly
a mental crisis. So they're so traumatized that they didn't have online gaming, right? There was no fantasy. Plus, the 1880s was a lot of occultism and some pretty bizarre out there stuff.
Mesmerism,
right?
Yes,
right, mesmerism, etc. Right, seance, etc., etc., etc. So you have this First World War, which traumatized all of Europe to an astonishing degree, and so one of the potential responses is to move straight into depravity as an escapism, right? Treating yourself.
Well, it's a catharsis. It's a catharsis. Yes. It's something that evacuates.
Yeah. So I mean, it's understandable. It's not acceptable, but it is understandable. How are we not there today? Why is it not a surprise that after the last 5 years, under the COVID nonsense, that we've been sufficiently, traumatized enough in the West, and that would include Europe and North America, Australia, South America to varying degrees, right? Why is it not? Why it should be no surprise that we've fallen into the same debauchery as an escape. We're still responsible for it, but it becomes understandable. So then smarter people than us go, we're going to use this. And then 1929 hits. And then Agenda 2030 is the response to 1929, 100 years later. So that now that they've seen how bad it can get and what it took for them to correct it in their favor, they now know how to play the game. So they drive us to a form of collective insanity. And they are the sociopaths, Mr. Canada. So yes, you're right. They drive us to a collective insanity, force a financial crisis of planetary inconvenience on us, and then 2030 becomes as the welcome savior.
It's interesting what you're mentioning, and I think our viewers making a difference between psychopath and sociopath. I think it's very important what you're mentioning. The fact that we are in now, and payment, you mentioned many liberals, they arrive with their Vuitton and they buy a latte, $12. Who buys a coffee, $12? Somebody who goes to Slavoj Žižek, who's a Slovenian philosopher, he was talking about the Starbucks concept. You go to Starbucks, You buy a latte. I don't even know what it is. It's not possible. Me, I like real coffee, not bullshit. You buy a latte, $12, and because if you buy a $12, you put $1 for poor people in Bangladesh. You put $1 for somebody to save Slava Ukraine. We support Israel, and then you feel so good. You save the planet, you save the whale, you save everybody. You gave money to Greta Thunberg, and you go back to your bullshit life because you spend your time losing your life. This is where I forgot to say this at the beginning of the show. I want to thank people who are watching us and not cutting their lawn on a Saturday afternoon when it is nice. They take the time to listen to three men who are concerned about the future of this country. And if that's a duty, and that's an engagement, that's a commitment. We expect people to do this. I don't say that you don't have to cut your lawn, to mow your lawn, but the idea is that maybe don't put all your eggs in one basket. Do a little bit of intellectual work. Try to follow what is happening, because the world is changing fast. And maybe you will get out of your house one day, you say, what the hell happened while I was doing this? Like Tim mentioned, 1920, people did not have internet, no technology. But they had other entertainment. They were entertaining themselves because they had to get out of this bloody war. 1914, 1918, 30 million people were killed in the trench. It was a bloodshed everywhere. What do we see now, 2025? 1.3 million people died in Ukraine in 3 years. 1.3 million men died in Ukraine in 3 years. That's what we call depopulation. The democracy of Ukraine, the demography of Ukraine dropped 25% in 3 years. And it is not because of of Russia, it's because of the global context. And we have to pay attention to this because the events are unfolding very rapidly. And in Canada, I think Canada is a weak country, so they will attack the weakest animal of the flock. Canada, the colonies, maybe all the countries that are weak morally or economically, they will be attacked. Canada, and it's not because Canada is not rich. Canada is rich, but we are weak. Politically, we're weak.
Yeah. And those colonies being Anzac, right? Australia, New Zealand, Canada, right? India to a degree, although India's big enough to be making its own mind because it's leaning into BRICS, right, which is a different path. So the British colonies in particular, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and some other smaller ones, we have been too soft, too untouched by hardship for too long. And so as long as our governments and agencies act with plausible deniability, then we will continue to accept the abuses. And the idea that we have a conservative name on a party that is okay with full-term abortions with no legislation, no policy, no program to monitor that, except those agencies which execute those services and then bill the government, bill you and me for it, as an example. A conservative party in name only now that is satisfied to see literature being pushed to teenagers for government medical suicide, to teenagers, and the Conservative Party is satisfied to this. They're satisfied for euthanasia services in our own medical system, and you and I are paying for those services. The shoe is going to drop. the shoe is going to drop. I don't know what's going to come down for Canada, but the shoe is going to drop. In war, traditionally, all the men were removed from the population. Newfoundland, for example, in 2 world wars, half of the male population went to war, twice in 2 generations. Newfoundland has been gutted forever genetically because of those 2 events. And you're going to, like you're always saying, this is happening in the Ukraine. For what purpose? Right? So the question has to be, for what purpose? We are currently on the bad end of the stick for a replacement replacement population program in Canada, and we are on the citizens born here are on the bad end of that stick. And in some ways, our own employers and our own landlords and our own post-secondary institutions are facilitating that replacement using our tax dollars, and we're permitting this to happen. What I hoped for during COVID was that white collar and small mom and pop store owners and stuff would simply say, I'm done paying taxes, this is garbage, and simply stop remitting. They did not. And as a result, the government goes, well, now we're going to make you be our hammer. We will be the anvil, but you will be our hammer. And so what's the point of legal justice or civil law when it's no longer respected? You have Bernier and was it Hillier who were prevented from traveling very publicly during the COVID mandates. And so they took to civil law, because it's not a criminal. They took to civil law and were told, well, the mandates they're over now, so it's all moot. So if you have people of such significant social impact and weight, political weight as those 2, who are simply being shoo, go away, kid, you bother me. How much justice is the average citizen going to get? They're not. And yet we sit here taking the abuse. The idea that people in Alberta can make protest and make their small separation parties and their movements, and good on you taking advantage of your right as a citizen to protest and demonstrate. That's very good. But all we do is what my son calls the endless yap. Then you're doing their work for them. Unless you're doing something, then you are not contributing.
But I would have a question, when you say you're doing something, what are the tools that citizens have today when you're censored at every level of government? You go to the municipal council, they cut the microphone, they throw you out. The police is there waiting for people who will ask a complex question. You see it at every level. Bureaucrat, they arrive you, they harass you on your land. It's everywhere. It has infested every level of social life. I will not even say political life. And the spectrum from left to right, the political spectrum is the same. And people, they have this tendency of saying, okay, we need more laws. No, we don't. We don't need more laws. We need civil duty. We need people who have moral code. We need people who can control themselves, be more mature. I don't expect somebody who's 14 years old, who's full of hormone, to be mature. It is not. It's like children. But look at the majority of the population. You were talking, Tim, about education. Look at the majority of the population who are uneducated. It's not a question of college or university degree. They're uneducated. They don't have a culture, a general culture that they can share. It's entertainment. It is not culture. It is not art. It is entertainment. You have to entertain or disturb the brain of people. That's concerning. And it took 60, maybe 70 years to destroy this structure of education. Now we're in. How do we react? Do we have any strategy for that? I don't see them. The only outcome I see is insurrection, and I don't want that.
The strategy, as I see it, starts in the family first. They have been hell bent on destroying the glue that holds the nuclear family together, be it economic or spiritual or cultural or whatever means they can do to drive a wedge between husbands and wives and husbands and brothers and sisters and fathers and daughters and mothers and sons and aunties and uncles, and whatever they can do to drive a wedge. And putting a cell phone in the hand of a teenager is a really great way to isolate them, and because they're already feeling separated. So now you're going to silo them into 100,000 other kids who feel the same way, and your parents are not connected because they're all stuck in their own thing. The only way against that is to reconnect with the family. And we have to use an example, because I'm just air. I'm just a fat head with hot air if I don't put my money where my mouth is. So my family began talking about this. How do we do this? And it's difficult because I have children that live in other parts of the province. I'm lucky. All my children, they all live in the same province. So in that way, I'm lucky. But what we decided with is my son, adult son, and my mother and I rented a 3-bedroom house on a small property together. That's a step, right? So the values are immediate. Cost savings is massive. It's massive. And it allows us to save up money for, contingencies and future planning. It also gives the rest of the family an anchor should they need it. Right. And so that's the goal. So the only way is to go against the grain of our independent, our me generation culture, and to bring the families back together. And that includes us making changes to our personality that are more compliant with family living again. All these things that we have bristled against for 40, 50, 60 years in North America, for sure, because we were all taught to be independent. You're all growing up now. My folks joked when I graduated from high school because they gave me luggage, right? And I got it.
Don't come back.
I got it. It was a funny joke, right?
No, but it is true.
It was a funny joke. We must reunite families. We must find a way to reunite families, because only in doing so will we earn the trust of each other, so that when we have to tell each other the hard truths, the government wants to kill your children before they're born. The government wants to take away your Canada. The government wants to put you under the heel of foreigners. We are going to stop that. And that, to me, that's the way forward.
I think it's a good way of framing it, but I thought maybe we can abruptly transition to our next topic. We're at the
can I just react to two comments?
Sure.
Tim was referring to the family and the new noise Inc. said the church after the nuclear family. Let's not forget one thing. Canada is a Christian country, and it was destroyed in a sense that we forgot our roots, and now I can refer to what Mark Carney said about Islam last week. It is like, wait, we have to now. You will hear soon the call from mosque on a Friday afternoon. Do we hear bells on Sunday morning? Churches bells. Do we hear this across Canada? The bell were the symbol not only of religion, but they were also a symbol of time and a symbol of harmony. You hear this, it appeases your soul, it appeses your mind. You go to the church, you meet people, you come together. You can disagree, you can go and listen to a priest if you want, but we lost this not only religious, this spiritual value. Tim mentioned the family, but There's a spirit behind and I think he's right. Then the church after the nuclear family. Rebuilding a country means we have to rebuild also spiritually. It's not only about materialism. I understand that people want to have a house, a car, but for what purpose you have a house and a car? You need a roof because you want to be protected from the element, but you need a roof because maybe you want to build a family, you want to build a heritage, you want to build a memory. We forgot that. Where we are, Canada and the Western world is a materialistic society, and we focus on that, and we always forget the roots of our own identity, which would be we are dispendable. We will be replaced. And if we have children and grandchildren, and we can give them values, prosperity, freedom of speech, debate, we have to think about it. So I just wanted to react to what the new noise was talking about.
Yeah. Why is it that those of European heritage seem to be the only ones that hate their religious history or hate their spiritual past? So many other peoples and cultures, they may not overtly participate in the religions and cultures these of their history, but they don't out and out try to destroy it from their lifestyle and their behavior. I found it really odd, because I don't think that I have to be a Christian to participate in a country that exercises the moral code that you will find in Christianity. So it's and recognizing that we are not only physical beings, we are emotional and spiritual beings. And spiritual doesn't mean I'm trying to get my chakra lined up, or I'm trying to earn enough brownie points to get into heaven. Spiritual means that I recognize that there are relationship values between me and the other person that cannot be measured and observed with tools. Right? There are aspects of me being friends with you two men and making relationships with the people who participate in our show that cannot be observed or measured with tools. There is something out there beyond our physical selves that connects us. And for us to silo away into little tiny like-minded groups makes you divisible. And that's what they are doing, and they're doing it very, very well. I thought when I was in my late 20s and the internet was becoming a thing, that we'd met this amazing technology that would connect the world. And it has connected the world only to fracture it again.
Dissolve
right?
it, yes.
Right. When I was early in marketing, we're all excited about the fact that the internet would allow you to mass market to the niche. Right? And that's true. That's true. But look at Facebook, for example. A Facebook group could have 5,000 members in it, let's say, and 3 of them live in the same town. Like, other than the philosophy and the talking and the sharing of memes or whatever in that group, where is the real world value, except unless I'm doing something in my town, right? So you say, the joke about, they could be out mowing their lawns today, but instead they're watching 3 guys shoot their face off about politics and philosophy and history and economics and war and all this other stuff that we'd really rather not have to do on a Saturday. Maybe mowing the lawn is the answer, but not mowing the lawn ignorantly pretending that you don't hear the sirens off in the distance, but mowing the lawn knowing that being out in the world, being seen by your neighbor, showing I have courage to live today, maybe that's the answer.
I guess we have 4 topics. Maybe we can get to them. But the next topic that we want to talk about is the big one: the international deterioration of peace. I mean, you had Ukraine, and we've talked about that to death. The riots in LA, and now there was a strike on Iran yesterday or the day before. And I wanted to take a couple moments because I talked to my cousin. He's in Iran, and I talk to him all the time. And it's always, like, things are bad, and then we take it back, and he makes a joke. This was different. Like, he was furious. He said the inflation rate in Iran is 40%. He said he was up from 11 p.m. until 4 a.m. Like the bombs were coming down. They were super loud. And I asked him how did it happen? Did they just use jets, the planes, whatever, the fighter jets? And he goes, no, they sent in drones. And the drones, from what I understood, they're marking the anti-aircraft fire, or they're taking out the anti-aircraft fire, and then they're taking out the jets. Then the jets can come in and they can take out the building. So they're just, they have air superiority. Now, I don't care which side you support, Iran or Israel. If you look at Ukraine, they pumped so much money and so much armaments into Ukraine with the anti-aircraft fire that the Russians couldn't go in. This is, Andre, what you're saying, Mike, is right. Like, if a country can't defend itself, it's not sovereign. So when this whole purpose, in my opinion, of saying that Iran can't have a nuclear weapon, they probably want to promote this whole war machine because it's a money generating thing. And if Iran can defend its airspace, then there's no need for jets, is what I'm trying to say. So that's one of the things. And the other thing I noticed, the propaganda just in the past 48 hours. Let's go back to the election. COVID, the 2021, I believe, was the election. They used fear, and the messaging was pretty bad, but it was still manageable. 2025, they honed their skills, and they used fear, and it was disgusting. Like, if you are a Canadian and you voted for the Liberals, do not try to tell me that you somehow have a brain. Like that was the level of propaganda that they needed for that. It's like it must have been the flimsiest. I don't know how they did it. Like how you could buy into that and still claim to be a functioning citizen. It blows me away. But here,
the liberal voters' brain smooths over time.
Sure, but the what I'm trying to get at with that is, with Ukraine, they never said pray for Russia. Like when Russia invaded Ukraine, they never said pray for Russia. Israel, they've started this operation, and there was messaging online for pray for Israel, and like how far have we dropped as a society that we can't have common rational thinking? If you look at 9/11, America got attacked before the people could be convinced to invade another country that had nothing to do with it, Iraq. But it was an internal logic to it. They didn't, nobody said pray for Afghanistan, pray for the Taliban. I don't know. I don't really have much hope for, again, I'm not taking sides. I know I was born in Iran. My cousin, he told me himself, I'm like, what do you think is going to happen? He goes, they're going to have to go to the negotiating table. There's too much inflation. And he started screaming he's like, what is it with these mullahs? We don't want atomic bombs. Like, we just want to be left alone so that we can live our lives. Who the hell wants a nuclear weapon? Let me take this out.
You talk about nuclear weapons, but let's not forget that nuclear is energy first. And then you said Russia invaded Ukraine. Russia did not invade Ukraine. Russia reacted to the expense, the propagation of NATO all around Russia. And 14,000 citizens died from 2014 till 2022 in the Donbass, bombed and killed by the Kiev regime. So I will talk about the concept of R2P, right to protect, that was invented by the Western civilization. When they wanted to do a regime change, they said we have the right to protect. We saw this with Serbia, the Kosovo, 1999, 2002 in Iraq, 2011 in Libya, 2009 in Libya, 2011 in Syria. Then Russia arrived and they said, okay, wait a second. The right to protect. And I remember Russia at the time said, okay, we have the right to protect. But they waited 8 years before they intervened in the Donbass because they were hoping that there was somebody rational on the Western side. There was nobody rational. Western civilization is not rational anymore. It's a war machine, a war structure. they aim for it. You talk about Ukraine. Look at what Iran is suffering, the pressure of the sanction. It is what the Russian sanction. It is since 2014 with the Crimea. The pressure on Iran. It's about 35 years of sanction everywhere. And don't forget, Iran is what, the fourth or the fifth biggest reserve of oil on the planet. So they want to target them. Iran developed civil nuclear. You're not allowed to have civil nuclear to supply energy. You say your friend in Iran just want to be left in peace. Okay, progress. Who talks about the 250,000 nuclear bomb of Israel who did not sign the treaty? Who talks about them? I would say Israel doesn't have the right to have the nuclear bomb. Let's say China and India and Pakistan. I'm sorry, but when they start to push the agenda all the time, and now it is an attack, a deliberate attack by Israel on Iran. Yeah. And they want to derail the process, the negotiation process between Trump and Iran. Don't forget one thing. Trump said, "I don't know. I was not aware of what happened when they attacked the nuclear triad of Russia." And Mark Rubio said yesterday, "We were not informed." Shit, you're in power and you are not informed. You're lying in my face. You're lying in my face. You're a liar, and you're not a diplomat. You're lying to people. You're manipulating them, because if you were not informed with what happened, it means that you're not at your place. Somebody should replace you. And I would say, I will end on that. Trump is in a dead trap, because he does not control the CIA. He does not control the intelligence services. You saw Lindsey Graham in Ukraine. You saw Keith Kellogg in Ukraine. They want to derail the process. Even if I don't like him, I don't like his style, but he's stuck. And now what I see is that you have warmonger who are hoping to derail all process of peace everywhere, because chaos is money. This is their business model. The military and Iran, I just read this morning, 2 F-35 were shot down. It is not confirmed. Don't quote me, and I'm not a military expert. But they went over Lebanon, and like you said, they flood the air defense. So they can counter the air defense, and then they attack. How come they pass over the Lebanese territory? Is it because they have? Usually, you violate the airspace of somebody. It's quite serious, the crisis now. It is quite serious, and I can understand people who want to mow their lawn because they don't want to hear what we are saying. This is a real political crisis, and nobody's paying really attention because they're focusing on local problem, economy, and everything. But it's starting to look very shitty, and we will arrive at a point where government will not have any other choice than imposing martial law. Martial law meaning, okay, we are at war, rearming European Union with Canada. With what money? With fiat money? No. You expropriate people, you nationalize the industry, you make sure that you control all the process, because on the other side, you have China, Russia, and Iran.
But Carney is going to get money because he's going to take the unrealized capital gains from your house.
Yes, of course. But one day, the problem that you have, you will have an interior revolution. People one day, they will, when it is minus 25 outside, I always take this simple example, and it is minus 25 inside of your house, or you're on the street, it's more easy to go on the barricade and to start to do manifestation. You will have an insurrection inside, and maybe that's what he wants. Maybe that's what he wants, an insurrection inside, so he can impose martial law and derail the Alberta separatist movement. You know, there are now international politics, national politics are entangled. They're mixed. People don't understand that.
It's a post-nation state. So who
yes,
cares?
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So we're no longer framing it as Canada or America or Britain or Luxembourg, or we're not, because it's a post-nation state. There are no borders. The borders are permeable. We can open and close them depending on the needs of our conversation. A comment about Russia, Ukraine, Israel, Iran. This is going to be converted culturally into Crusades 3.0.
That's a good observation.
Yeah.
Yes,
because I know after 9/11,
war of religion.
Right after 9/11, shit for brains down the states used the word crusade shortly after and shortly before going into Iraq, and then later into Afghanistan. The idiot used the word crusade. I'm like, you know, I can appreciate where you're going, but now is not the time. But this time, 30 years, 20 years later, you're going to get that language, not without using the word crusade, but by using Christianity versus Islam and East versus West. The blend of our political alliances and the blend of our religious infusions in those political policies.
Let me pick up on that. That's where I was going with this. I want to tie this massive propaganda, Israel, Iran, to Canada.
Yeah.
They brought in millions of immigrants, and let's say they brought in 1 million Muslims. So now Canadians, they're understandably upset, and they're expressing that their sense of being upset in what I don't want to say racism, but let's call it the xenophobia. So they're talking about how Muslims are throwing gay people off of buildings. I'm sure that's happened, but that's not why they're saying that. They're saying there's too many Muslims here. And then when this happens, those same people that the government made upset, now the government can go to them and appeal to their Christian heritage and say, this we're doing this for God. We're doing this in the name of Christianity. So they're duping these people.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to talk to them because they're acting emotionally, not rationally.
It's a thing of beauty, isn't it?
It works very well.
Right? You just wind up the toy, put it on the floor, and watch it go. You don't really have any control over whether it turns right or left or goes forward or rocks on a wooden wheel and tips over into the air. You don't really have a whole, but you wind it up and let it go. And as long as it still runs around in the room, you've contained it. Right? So the same thing, you're taking the lunatic right-wing evangelical Bethel nonsense Christian interpretation of Western of that faith, and you weaponize it.
Yes.
And you weaponize it with using xenophobia and using our ancient enemy, Muslims.
Well,
right? And how dare they impinge on the heroic nation of Israel, which I'll go on record now and say this out loud. The current geopolitical structure known as Israel does in no way represent the roots of its faith. It does not. And it does not make the decisions it makes purely to defend itself. It also makes them for financial and geopolitical gain. Because if we say, oh, the Iranian people are being taken advantage of by a crushing regime, true. Oh, the people in California are being beat up by an idiot governor, also true, right? Can't be mad at Canadians because we got a freaking lunatic in our government since 2015, also true. So you can't suddenly turn that around and put hate on an entire group of people because of what the leaders are busy doing up in the clouds somewhere. We can't do it, and we're being suckered into it. So when you want to point out the similarities between Russia and Ukraine and the similarities between Israel and Iran, And what I'd said last week about the similarities between Ukraine today and the Arab states during the First World War, right? And how the Arab nations and those peoples were taken advantage of to weaponize them against the Ottomans. Right? And I feel it's very similar. We talked about this last week with what's going on with Ukraine and the West, NATO in particular, weaponizing Ukraine to fight against the Russians. And that's the old bear nonsense where I think Becoming Authoritarian made a sideways comment, but he's right. Ukraine is Afghanistan, but Afghanistan during the first two wars in the 1800s, when Britain was so intent on making sure that Russia did not go into Afghanistan, that they went into Afghanistan themselves using India. So even 200 years ago, we're already creating a culture of cultural and religious strife between the West and between Islam. We're doing it again. We're doing it again.
Well,
Dollars or donuts. Some moron's going to use the word crusade, and half of the Christian right in North America is going to say, "Amen, Jesus, pass the chips."
They already use this because you have what we call the Templar, and they're promoting this type of agenda. I want to react to what you were saying about about crusades, or about what could happen. How do we define freedom in a situation like this, either international politics or national politics? When we talk about illiteracy, political illiteracy, or just basic illiteracy, I read an article about what is a free society. A political elite that is aware of its duty toward the people, and citizens that are educated. They know their purpose in life. They know that, for example, a democracy is fragile and they have to protect it, watch guard, barriers, checks and balance. When you talk about religion, you will appeal to the emotional. You always refer to the amygdala. You will appeal to the emotional behavior of people. Emotional in the sense that you pray, you are, it's a dialogue with God, and you go to the church, or you go to the mosque, or you go to the synagogue. It's important to make a difference between those two worlds. It doesn't mean that you have to separate them completely. It doesn't work. But if you are in a crisis like this, it's not because your neighbor is Muslim that you have to start to hate him. It's something so much deeper. And most people, because they are illiterate, they will jump on the first scapegoat. Yes, and they will attack, and some people will take advantage of that. The difficult part in a situation like this, when you are in a situation where you have to be emotional because you don't have money, you cannot feed your children, you will lose your house, somebody's taking your job, quote unquote. You have to be able to act rationally. And we are not in a rational context now. Most people act emotionally. I think, Payment, you mentioned that a couple of times. I think that's why we should try to raise the level of expectation, saying to people, calm down. Now it's time for diplomacy. What happened in Ukraine last week, what happened in Iran yesterday, and you saw the retaliation of Iran. You cannot expect a diplomatic discourse in a situation like that. They're fueling the fire. And they try to derail the talk. And what is the purpose? To create chaos and to implement something, or like you said, Tim, to destroy what is left of what we think is democracy. I think today we are facing this. I don't know how to get out of it, but I urge people to try to be moderate. First of all, in their comment on social media, it's horrible what you're seeing. The amount of aggressivity is rising everywhere. It is not a way to react.
So one thing I wanted to mention, what worries me, Canada it says agree, but we are all with Trump. Donald Trump, like, he will lose a big portion of his isolationist anti-war base, what we call sort of MAGA, because he came in as the anti-war president, no more forever wars. Okay, well, if he knew about Ukraine with the drones, which seems like he did, and if he knew about Israel, which I believe he did,
yes,
this
there's no
is
way
not
you
going to
can.
go well. And he can't. And Andre, you might be right. He doesn't have control over the CIA, the FBI, the DOD. But he can't say that to his base. He can't say, "I am a weak, feckless president. Vote for me in the midterms, my party." That's one thing. And the other thing I'll quickly say, 80% of Canada are these brain dead, lowercase L liberals who voted with their elbows up. 10% on the left are emotional. That's how they're emotional. On the left, they're emotional because if we breathe out CO2, we're all going to die. On the right, they're emotional because of this whole heightened issue with Islam. For the record, there's way too many immigrants. Like, we need to put that stop. But you have these three groups that are very, very impressionable, very easy to manipulate.
And for the record, most of the new people coming in are from India and Pakistan. Yeah. Right? It is still a minority of Muslims coming in. And that's got a lot to do with our multiculturalism over the last 40 years and how that's worked out. Let's go back to the agree, but we are all with Trump. I have never been with Trump. I am a Canadian. And I refuse to rah-rah sis boom bah for anyone outside my own country when I have my own heroes and I have my own villains. I'm aware that Trump is pretty damn good at playing reality TV, and I recognize his skill to get the job done that way. Right. But I am a Canadian, so I am not standing with Trump in the sense that I support. I can like someone without having to agree with 100% of everything they do all the time, which means I'm really bad at being a Marxist. To News Noise Inc., you and I are the same age. If our lens to look at Israel is seen through that moron Yasser Arafat and the rotten, horrible, evil things that man was responsible for, you and I are the same age. I was in my mid-teens, I think, when all that garbage was going on. Yasser Arafat, Anwar Sadat, all the bus bombings and the horrible, evil, terrible thing. And anyone I see wearing that white and black houndstooth scarf, I just want to smack them, right? And I totally understand. But that Israel is not this Israel. And that's the problem. And this Israel and that Israel is not the one formed in 48. And it is 48. Not the one from 1918. And it is not the one from 535, when the last remaining Sanhedrin established a new calendar and moved Sabbath to Saturday instead in order to protect the people from persecution from Christians in the Roman Catholic Church at that time. So the groups, Israel, Judaism, Rome, Greece, Christianity, blah, blah, all this Western stuff, all this stuff from our mythos was not then what we attribute to it then. We have Disneyfied the hell out of it, right? We've completely Disneyfied it. Were there evil, terrible, horrible men like Arafat up to these nefarious, terrible deeds? Absolutely. But then over in Lebanon is Gaddafi saying one of the most lasting counter-revolutionary statements of the last 3 generations, and that is, we're going to overtake Europe without having to fire a single shot. We'll simply outbreed all of you. And it's happening. Our heroes, the ones that we ascribe to be our heroes, are not who we have given them to be. They are not who we want to think they are. The average citizen, busy trying to live out their lives, busy trying to make their ends meet. I completely get it. We want to hate against the rich. We want to hate against the elite. We want to hate against the government. We want to hate against bureaucrats. I understand. But it's the guy who lives 2 doors down from you who, when given the order, because he works with public works, went down to the local park and tore down the museum of Sir John A. Macdonald, the statue, because he was told to, and I'm just doing my job. Those are the people who are the problem. Because they're the ones executing the orders.
Well, you're mentioning something important about compliance, and I think there's a lot of people today who comply because they're afraid. We saw it with COVID mandate, and they comply. And when we think about nation, they're not immortal. Nation can disappear. People can disappear through time. And I see what is happening now. You have some people who will say, I stand with Israel. Some people will say, I stand with Palestine. And deep inside of them, they have to ask themselves for what I stand for. What do I want to support? If they have, for example, the memory of the Holocaust, they will have a certain explanation. But we have also to look at the fact. The fact are now that you have a genocide in Gaza, and despite you can think about, okay, Hamas is a terrorist group, and there's still a lot of people who are not they don't want to be part of a war. They are victims of war. I think there's a lot of victims of war now, because war does not stop. Since 2001, United States is at war with everybody, and they are used as, I would say, a weapon. The Congress is used as a weapon, financing all those regime change. So we are arriving at what Michael Jones is talking about. He's saying the Third Republic in the United States is arriving to its end, 80 years. And he's saying the Third Republic will be replaced by what? A dictator, tyranny, a Fourth Republic, because one day people cannot support war anymore. Whether it is in Iran, in Israel, in Ukraine, in Russia, we saw Pakistan, and we see it everywhere. And we have to be able to talk to each other. But some people, they hate each other so much, or they are so they have so big interest, financial interest, that they cannot talk rationally. Think about the leftist people who believe about climate change. They, like the payment said, you breathe CO2, you will kill everybody. They don't think. So they are in a automatic mode, and they do not. You can say, do I stand with Israel? I would say I would stand with the sovereignty of a country named Israel, like I would stand for the sovereignty of a country named Canada. Give me my sovereignty, give me a freedom of speech, freedom to criticize too. Why, when we talk about Israel or Russia, for example, because it's quite fascinating. I can talk a lot about the links between Russia and Israel, because you have to read Solzhenitsyn to understand what is happening now. I have the right to criticize. Does that make me an anti-Semite? No. I have the right to criticize, and I have the right to expose facts. If I don't have that, where do we stand? We saw this with the COVID mandate and the curfew and everything. They were censoring everybody. We are in an irrational and emotional world now. We have to get out of it. And it starts with each and every one of us.
Can you bring up News Noise comment about American enemies? No. Because while he's News Noise, American enemies know they need to clutch hegemony. News, while you're saying that, this thought is creeping in my mind. America, having been locked into this coitus with the horror of the rest of the world for a generation, is now trying to pull out. And Babylon is wrapping its legs around him saying, no, you will finish. I'm not done yet. you will give me what's mine. So there's your clutching hegemony at all costs.
What was the queen of Babylon? What was her name?
That's right, the whore of Babylon, right? I mean,
yes, the horror. Yeah, that's what I referred to.
I'm misusing the reference, but the clutch hegemony, that's the picture in my head. Is America is trying to pull out, and then Babylon's saying, "You're not till you give me what's mine," right? And so that's, anyway. It's America is done policing the world, right? After the Second World War, they got the most powerful navy ever seen on the planet, and they said, "We will ensure peace by maintaining the naval pathways for trade." Makes sense. If you can control the oceans, and this is before air power became what it's capable, before missiles, et cetera, right? So back when a battleship still had power on the field. So they've done this. Now they're tired of it. I think the American people are like, we've been wrapped up in some kind of a war for 270 years. I'm kind of tired of the whole thing. So America's trying to get out. Trump's very protectionist language, making comments about the Panama Canal and making comments about the Northwest Passage in Greenland, is that protectionist language is, we're tired. Leave us alone. And the rest of the world, Europe in particular, because Europe has been the biggest benefactor of the American-Europe relationship, right? How many times has America said to all of Europe together, y'all need to pull up your socks. We're paying too much money here, right? You look at Canada, and most other EU nations as well, are supposed to have agreed to 2% of their GDP per annum contributed toward NATO and other similar ventures with, joint operations and things like that. Canada's never given more than 1%. Right. And then it's little tiny countries that are giving like 3%, 4%. Let me grant you that dollar value is low in comparison, but the percentage value is high. And Canada's not doing this. America's like, how many times recently Trump says to Canada, with $300 billion, right, you owe us, we've subsidized your guys, your green asses up there quite long enough, right? So we want, it's time for you to, it's time for you to pony up and pay your share. So then how does Canada respond to being told to pay their share? They bring in Daddy King Windsor to wag his finger at the Canadians and say, know your place in the Commonwealth. Because that's exactly what he did.
Exactly.
I'll break to a little story I read in the newspaper in the 90s, and I've never forgotten it. There was a woman who was a chambermaid in one of the palaces, and she'd written a letter to one of her superiors saying that she would like to apply for another position, which was higher up the ladder and better, better financially, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. She got a response to her application from Charles in the 90s. And in effect, it said, because it was published in like the Sun or something, right? In effect, it said, do not aspire above your station in life.
Jeez.
And that's what Charles did when he came to Canada. You are our servants. We're going to do this together. We will lead you. You will follow. We will be great. Don't aspire above your position in the Commonwealth.
In the Middle Age, you had three orders. You had the monarchy, the peasants, and the church. What has changed since 300 or 500 years? We still have the same. No, the word has changed. How we call them, but the structure is the same. We talk about the Vatican. I can talk about the Metropolitan in Russia, which is quite fascinating because they're very powerful. So you have the citizen, you have the government or the king, and you have the church. Our church could be today the lobbies.
I was going to say the central bankers.
VPs, right?
That's very good. That's a very good observation because they are, you have three big entities. If we look at the United States, even if we criticize United States, they are the most popular expression of what is a modern republic. because they have a very, it's full of mistakes in this constitution, but it is written, and I think it was somebody made a comment about how the constitution was written, so future generation will not deprive the power of the constitution, not depriving the future generation to have progress. It's not that. So they make sure that the core ideas of a constitution will be immortal. Hannah Arendt was talking about this, comparing system. So what we see now, I think it's a battle between what is really a republic and what would be a global hegemony, in a sense represented by the European Union and the monarchy. And then you have the other pole. So simple citizens, we're stuck in this, and we try to make sense out of something that is maybe out of our scope. It's a historic shift. How can we? Me, I say buy popcorn and watch the show.
And yeah, and even in our conversation, as enlightened as we think we are, I think I am. China sits on the side, twiddling its chopsticks, just waiting. Just waiting, right? It's just BC ferries. Oh my God. Like it's absolute insanity. They're just keeping quiet, keep their head down, wait for it. The frickin' West will implode and cough itself up, serve itself to the Chinese, most likely the Chinese.
Most likely.
Right in a basket. Gotta go back to your church, state, and monarchy for a bit. Sorry, church, state, and the plebes, right? The serfs.
Yes.
And I said it hasn't changed, but it has, because today we educate our serfs. They become literate.
No, you train them. You don't educate them.
Okay, but let's pretend for a moment that I'm talking about an era before Common Core nonsense, right? Right? That they're literate, and yes, we can argue against that, because I've often said I can read and write and still be illiterate. And so we are agreed on that. But what I'm saying is, I think that the serfs who could not read and write were better positioned and more rational in their culture than we are today, because we have so much access to information, and we lack the cultural and lack the discernment to be rational. Right?
Exactly. Right? Our brains are polluted.
Our brains are so polluted, and I can play a video game and get my dopamine fix, or I could go out in the backyard and dig it all up and make it nice and level like I should go out and do, and that would give me the same dopamine fix, but I'd be there for hours sweating and toiling and sore and cursing the rake. Or I can sit, right? Because we are wired for certain things, certain ways. And we as a culture have found the fastest, easiest way to get our fix.
Don't forget when you go outside, don't forget the mosquitoes. And I'm pretty sure, in virtual reality, that would be interesting. You have a helmet or a suit, and you will have mosquito bites. That could be interesting.
You bring up a good point. That we're winding down the show, so we can do the more simple topics. I grew up in Vancouver all my life, and I just assumed that there were no mosquitoes in Vancouver. Like, it's just beautiful. But that's because you're in this concrete jungle. If you take people from the cities and you take them out and you put them like 100 kilometers outside of the city, I don't think they could function. Mosquitoes is a perfect example. If you run into an army of like 1 million mosquitoes, good luck. Good luck.
Well, here I live north of Montreal, about 50 kilometers. There's a lot of mosquitoes. Go in Siberia. Go in Siberia, in Russia. Here they bite you on the place. In Siberia, they take you in the forest, they bite you, and they come and leave the rest of your body. When virtual reality, when we disconnect ourselves from virtual reality, we connect with nature, we connect with reality. I don't say virtual reality is bad. It gives a lot of opportunities. I would say, there's always the difference between the threat and the opportunity. We have to see it. We have to see the opportunities, but we have to also see the fact. The facts are there, and they're stubborn. Usually, they're really stubborn.
I'm trying to use my brain and my wits and my ability to make relationships and organize so that people younger and more skilled and stronger and better with long arms than me will protect my butt before I become useless to society in the brave new world.
That's why we expect younger generation to the fact that when we grow old we have less physical power, but we're supposed to have more wisdom.
Yeah.
And we're supposed to be able to transfer this wisdom to new generation, and not telling them, oh, and anyway, if you say don't do this, I did this, you will break your neck.
Right.
You will say, hey papi, go away, I will do it anyway. They will do it anyway. But if they can benefit from the wisdom, that's the transfer between generation that we don't have. You were mentioning the nuclear family. We have to rebuild this at every level.
For the last 40 years, we've been putting our seniors and our aged and our parents into homes. So we've been taking our banks of immeasurable wisdom and putting them away in dusty old libraries with bad third world care. And so that our Gen Xers like me don't have immediate access to that wisdom. Right. And the young people aren't making relationships with their grandparents. And like you say, don't stick your foot in that. Right. No, that's an electrical socket. Don't. No, I said don't. Right. We are so, every generation thinks that they're the first to experience it. That was a joke when I was growing up. Everybody thinks they're the first to experience it, only that now it's the truth. This generation is the first to experience it because no one's warning them not to.
Yes, and don't forget, there's another thing that I think will change our perception of reality is AI and the technology that is rising so fast that it will change our behavior and our way of thinking. Maybe we will witness something good. I don't know. I'm not optimistic, but I want to be realistic.
I just want to go back to something Canada said. This is a simple question. Is the PPC anti-American? I'm super pro-America. I love going there. I would say the PPC is probably the most pro-American. Their values are, the PPC platform is something you would expect in like Mississippi, like a hardcore right-wing town.
Well, I think the PPC is, we were talking about libertarianism, and the PPC is, reducing the size of the state, free entrepreneurship. So it's very aligned with the American Constitution and the American way of doing business, and I think they're very close to that.
Smith and Locke, right?
In theory.
Is it John Smith and John Locke? Right. So their theories are well aligned with libertarianism and a small government of a conservative nature. But you still need liberalism in a governing body. You need to have the balance. And the hard part is maintaining the balance willingly, because individuals of different mindsets and characters are constantly in conflict back and forth. Right. So the hard part is having people who lead you who have integrity to say, I know that I am in a position where I could relatively easily take power and control over you for my own benefit, but I'm a person of integrity and I choose to represent you, knowing that I'm being effectively compensated for my work and my labor and whatnot. And so this is the noblesse oblige element, right? So we recognize that we now have an elected nobility in democracies and republics, is an elected nobility. Does that elected nobility still operate with noblesse oblige? And the answer is no, they don't. So how do we get back to that?
Well, it will be, first of all, the new generation will arrive, and that's why education is so important. Reform of education will mean also a sense of duty. And I was talking, maybe I think it was last week, about what is diplomacy. You don't train a diplomat. People, they have to, you have schools of diplomat. Now you don't have this anymore. Teaching history, teaching geography, teaching mathematics, teaching fundamental fundamental knowledge so people can make better and rational choices. This is what we will have to rebuild. That's why I was referring to Anna Arendt when she wrote, you can educate a man, but you train a dog. We are trained animal. No, but it is interesting because we are animal of habits. I think it's important. Stability, security. But if it's only that, and if we don't use our rational mind to show that we are educated, we stay at a level of I'm well trained. I'm well trained. I function well in life. But do I reason? No. So you need both. You need to be able to elevate your thoughts, if it's possible.
I just remembered something. During the election, I went to a senior center. It was one of the debates, and there were so many pissed off seniors. Part of me believes that the reason they voted Liberal is they're trying to get back at their children and grandchildren for just abandoning these old person homes.
Well, that's a sense, because there's a lot of people who were abandoned, like you mentioned, and we're all responsible in a sense, like Tim mentioned, putting people in the residence for elder and everything. I think there's a sense of we just dropped the ball. We, instead of keeping hope and keeping those relationships, and institution like the government did not help at all. They even provoked the crisis. We have to rebuild this.
My father used to say, when I'm too old to be useful to society anymore, give me a knife and a length of rope and let me go off into the woods.
Well, you sound like an elephant now. Elephant, they go. No, but and I think it is important, and maybe there's a comment about what Sue mentioned about the boomers. I say, don't put people into categories. You have some people my age, older. I'm sorry, they're dead. They're brain dead. There's nothing you can do with them. You have some.
Well, there's the category you said not to categorize.
You have some people who are young and stupid. I'm sorry, that's the reality. You have idiots everywhere at every generation. But don't put people into categories. If you put people black, white, Jews, Muslim, Christian, women, men, if you start this, you end up in a ghetto intellectually, and it's hard to get out of it. It's very difficult. The comment about the comment from Sue Kellendar about boomers, they go vote, yes, because they feel responsible. Younger generation, they don't go to vote, for example, because they feel either less responsible or completely indifferent to what is happening. They say, what will change anyway? But the new generation, if they invest themselves into politics is not only the parliament. Politics is debate like we have now, conversation like we have now. Tim always mentioned grassroots. The discussion that you have, and I had many discussions with many of my members of my family, is, we will not talk about this now. But when we will talk about it, it's never the time. Sometimes you have to face reality. The roof is leaking. We will not talk about it now. When the crisis is there, you have to talk about the crisis. If you don't, you will postpone it, but it will come back.
When there's only two of you left with the shovel to bury the last third family member, maybe then you'll talk about it.
Most probably, yes, exactly.
Right? No parent revolts who sends their child to bed with a full stomach. Are we there yet?
We're still there.
I've been saying it for 5 years, and I'm not the first one to say it. Right? It's the only way forward is the family.
Let me one other thing my cousin told me about Iran, and I wanted to mention this. What's happening in Iran is exactly what's happening in Canada. It's just Iran is further along. So we have 7% inflation, they have 40%. Wow. We have rising crime. He said that it's so bad there. People on motorcycles that go around, if they see someone has jewelry, they mug them. If they don't give it up, they stab them. Same thing with cell phones. He's talking about when you go to buy a cell phone, they say, all right, let me check to see what the exchange rate is for the US dollar. There's so much inflation, they don't use the national currency. So society is falling apart. It's already fallen apart. Whereas in Canada, it is falling apart. Another thing, just to continue on that, in Canada, we've identified that we're no longer using housing principally for utility, a place to live. We're using it as a savings vehicle. Inflation is so bad in Iran, they're doing the same thing with vehicles, cars. So you buy a car today, in 3 years, the value is like quadrupled, even if you take inflation into account. Like they're using it as an inflation.
So it's a culture of speculation. You don't
It is,
have a
yeah.
house. You don't have a house because you need a roof. You buy a house because you want to make money, or you need a pension plan.
So if that's the case, then that means we are culturally already moving away from fiat currency.
Well, yes, and going closer to CDBC, social credit.
Yeah. Now remember the smile before you get on the bus, or you won't be allowed on.
Well, technology.
I already have my ticket to Rat Utopia.
I think it will not work. It never work. It never work in the sense that you will never replace an old system by innovation. Not completely. We still have barter.
What if it's not supposed to work? Let's go way outside the box, right? Let's ditch the comfortable conspiracy theories. Let's ditch the just some people just want to watch the world burn.
What are we talking about?
Antichrist,
right? Well, but even that has a purpose, apparently.
Sorry, Tim. Can you explain what you're talking about?
Okay, so if the goal of Marxism is endless revolution, there will never be a period of stability long enough for a generation to breathe the collective sigh of not stressful. Look, Andre mentioned this about Russia in the 50s or something. Stalin was still alive, and the diehard communists within his own party were saying, "What's wrong with you? Your government is becoming conservative." And Stalin's like, "The hell what are you talking about?" He said, then they said, "You've forgotten the goal of Marxism, which is endless revolution, and here you've gone and created a stable government."
Well, it's important what you're saying, because if it is a perpetual war, then let's not forget in 1942, Stalin had to reopen churches because he was losing on the Eastern Front, and he had to give hope to people. So he had to re-inject a little bit of religion in the system, because he said it doesn't work. It's like when you're putting oil on joint. It's exactly what is happening. You have to reopen. One day, maybe the new generation will just make an insurrection, and they will not run away. They will not go with a cane, because they're strong and they are determined. That's why it's always start in university. So we're arriving at the tipping point where we will see a lot of conflicts. How can we canalize the anger of generation and try to transform it into hope and positive energy? That's what we have to do, because else, like you said, if they want chaos, I remember I had a boss. He was telling me, "Don't mess with me. You can start the war. I will finish it." Yeah. And I understand that. There's a lot of people who want to create chaos, but they cannot control the reaction. Nuclear reaction is the same thing. If you have a nuclear reactor, be careful to control the reaction, because it will get out. It's the Pandora's box.
Yeah. Bring back a news noise.
Which is not a box. It was an amphora.
Yeah. Okay. So when I was watching, we were all watching television during the convoy when our idiot government declared the War Measures Act, because that's what it was. I sat there riveted to the television, thinking to myself, I'm about to watch 50,000 Canadians walk into Parliament and sit down in every available chair and shut the country down and stop this bullshit. Full stop. I'm on the edge of the single biggest moment in history in Canada. I'm so excited to be here. What great. Wait a minute.
Nothing happened.
Nobody's moving. They must be getting the trucks ready. They're making their way so they can all in, and then they're going to, and then it'll be just the grass will be just all humans moving like a. No, they're not. They're not moving the trucks. And hey, wait a minute. Nothing.
No strategy. It was a sit-in. It was a reaction. There's a, in a reaction, and Michael Jones in his book Buried Metal, he talks about 2008 crisis, and he talks about the Occupy movement. All the people that were there, it's like the mice are sieging the cat, and they're Wall Street, and he was saying they don't know what they're doing. They're doing manifestation, but they don't know why. They all have different agendas. 2022, they were reacting to the COVID mandate and the power grab of the government. But what could have become something that I think our colleague Arnold Eno talks about, a Pearl Harbor moment. I referred to that toward Russia last week. What would be the Pearl Harbor moment of Canada or Iran in this sense? What is happening now? If something that's an existential threat, when it arrives, you don't have the choice to unite and fight the aggressor. So I think I don't think we are there yet in Canada. I think we are still far from that.
I want to address News Noise Inc. Apparently he was in the Freedom Convoy, and he's saying they should have done the France Yellow Jacket thing. One thing I think we should give credit to the people that organized that movement, even if it wasn't centrally organized. They saw the struggles of what happened with January 6th, and they said we cannot give them any excuse to invoke the Emergencies Act, which they eventually did. But they did not throw a single rock at a police officer. They didn't spit in a police officer's face. They were polite. So kudos to them for that.
Yes, and you're right. Don't forget one thing. What happened in 2022, that was a high opening for so many people. Last week in Los Angeles, what happened?
Right.
Leftish, and they were saying, it is a peaceful manifestation. They were aggressing policemen. You can imagine
that was attempted murder of police officers.
Yes, yes.
What I'm saying is another thing I wanted to say to News Noise Inc. Some of the people that supported the Freedom Convoy, they revoked their support. They said it stayed for too long, it served its purpose. They should have packed up and left. And you don't have the support of these weak-kneed Canadians. You don't have the support of the urban centers. And I think it went on for a while, and Trudeau saw that he had the support of the urban centers and the pressure from the Biden administration, and he invoked martial law. I just don't think the Canadians had it in them to do that.
Maybe not.
I am reminded, and a friend of mine wrote an article about the comparison between the convoy, which was extraordinary event in history, and kudos to everything on the surface of that. The other stuff, not relevant to this conversation. Extraordinary. Every man, woman, and child who participated in that did an absolute. I was very proud to be Canadian. And then compared that to the Winnipeg workers' riots of 1909, I think it was, and what happened back there. The Canadians have been taught to have a national attention span about as long as the quarterfinals.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I understand you.
right. So
you need a progression. The pressure has to increase.
The pressure has to increase, and I'm not an instigator, but as an organizer or as a speaker, or what, I understand that every so often, like for example, Payman in our pre-show saying we're going to use the distributed agenda and then show people that, so that we kind of keep ourselves online and keep ourselves under the 90 minutes, which I say as we reach 2 hours and 13 minutes, right? But that,
and we didn't get to the fourth topic either.
Didn't get to the fourth topic either. But knowing that people will lose interest, not because they're not interested, but because they're not close enough to the fire to feel the heat, right? The Yellow Jackets, as an example, that fire was so hot, was that 2018, wasn't it? It was so hot that police officers that were sent out to shut them down were dropping their own vests and swapping sides.
Yes.
And that did not happen in Canada. I was hoping beyond hope, right? That our RCMP would literally, visibly, on their mounts, change sides. And on their mounts, they protected the European UN mercenaries who were in black and trampled on senior citizens, one of whom was an Indigenous woman. And nobody said nothing. Shocking. But unless you keep people motivated by continuously poking not the same bear, but the bear right next to him.
Well,
It's
there's one thing you mentioned about, feeling the pressure. Conservative people, they are independent people. And the 2022, I started to feel what was really the Canadian identity. We're tolerant, we're kind, but when you push, it's like a rat. You push a rat in the corner. I'm a moderate person, but I will not hesitate to defend myself or my family, my wife, in a situation where I need it. After that, they can put me in jail. It is not important. The law is not important. And maybe what you're mentioning, Tim, the pressure was not high enough. Maybe, I think Laurie F mentioned that maybe the movement was utilized or derailed. I will not comment that, but I think that one of the value is that when we are threatened, our existence, our way of life, our values, core values, when they are threatened, you start to stand up. And it took time, and maybe the pressure was not high enough, or they released the pressure on purpose, because maybe that's why I think the movement is an historic event.
See,
it's a very good. It's something that will be remembered.
Oh yeah, it's this. Yes, I mean it is as important to our generation's history as hearing Maxime say, "Only my words." Beautiful. That's historic. Beautiful, right? This is what I would do. I'm definitely going to get on another list after I say this out loud. If I was the leadership of the convoy and the government sent the RCMP to negotiate with me, I'd say, you can take your red jackets and fuck off. I came here to see my member of parliament, and until I see him, you can go get me some donuts. Get out.
You know what? That is right. Yeah,
middlemen. Bullshit. Pardon me.
No, that's absolutely true. You go to negotiate with someone, the guy doesn't send out a security guard.
Yep.
Well,
no, I don't want a negotiator. And they're using my natural respect for the RCMP, my natural respect for the red tunic, and used it against me. Fuck off. I came to see an MP. We sit here until he comes out.
Well, you see, we can go back to what I was saying at the beginning of the show with this journalist from Le Devoir who noticed that the MP don't want to answer to a question of journalists anymore. You go to see an MP as a citizen, and he doesn't want to see you. We are in a dead trap. We are in a dead trap. Join the list group. But we are in a dead trap in the sense that they are above the law completely.
Yeah.
Completely.
Sue, I've been a director of one of the PPC's regional district associations for 6 years. I'm on the list. So I am on the list. I go out, I go to a restaurant or go to a coffee shop or wherever, and then the younger people in the service industries primarily, and on occasion you strike up a short conversation, and I'll say to them, "Thank you for what you're doing. Your generation will save us." And some of them have said back, damn right we will. As if they know what I'm talking about. Our youth are savvy. We need to connect.
Well, maybe they will change our diapers. That's the way they will save us. But you never know.
We got no money.
No, but you never know, and I think you're right. That's why I say that let's not put people into categories, because you have a lot of wise young individuals.
Yep.
Let's put them into the light on the public place. Let's give them a chance to express themselves, to make mistakes, to make mistakes.
Once upon a time, I used to be very irritated and short-tempered with millennials, only to realize one day, wait a minute, Tim, all 4 of your children are millennials, and they're pretty good, and they're pretty good people. Like, they've got their head on their shoulder, and they're honest, and they say what they think, and they're good to their family, and they're good to their friends. Wait a minute. Oh, it's the parents of the millennials who made them millennials, because we were shitty parents ourselves. We raised our kids. We raised our kids on cell phones.
You talk about demography, and the birth replacement rate is 2.2 children per family. We're way under that, and we created a generation of people. I would not say selfish, but they're more individualist, because they have less children, they have more time. So if we want to reverse the situation, there was a statement from Pierre Poilievre this week, when he was saying, okay, we will put a moratorium on demography. I don't know if it is a Freudian slip.
Yeah.
And I was telling myself, wait, you don't have a birth policy? You don't say, Canadians, maybe if you would have more children, we would rebuild. No. I was like a little bit shocked. I says, what you want to bring? And if you have the 2100 the century agenda, which 100 million people in Canada, you don't want to make babies? You will have only adults. The pyramid of ages. It will be all between 20 and 25.
Be inverted.
It is so simple-minded that I'm telling myself they have no clue what they're doing, or if they do, it's because they promote this depopulation agenda. Reduce. How come you can depopulate? It's like I will refer now conspiracy theorists. We are directly at the end of the show. It's like, let's blow up the sun to cool off the planet, and let's implement or install solar panel.
Andre, Tim, you made me do it. You guys, you went on and on and on for very long. I was going to wrap up the show, but we're bringing up the 4th point.
I was just going to say, we got 2 minutes left.
Yes.
Who can play this game, all right?
Right. Darcy, don't. Sue is on. Don't talk about Brookfield. Oh, damn.
Yes. Let's talk about Brookfield.
So, Brookfield Modular Homes, Olivia Chow, that monster creature. She wants you to live in a shipping container. Christy Freeland wants you to live smaller. I don't know, man. Like, it used to be a savings vehicle. It's your nest egg. Now they're just, this government's killing you, and taking your home, I guess.
I will just comment very briefly on Olivia Chow wants you in a shipping container. There's an architect that I follow since many years. His name is David Orbach. He's a famous French architect, and he was talking about container in 2009. He was showing that the tendency is to put people into container, to consider them like product, and to be able to displace them wherever they want. That's preposterous. If a person like Olivia Chow says that, it's because she doesn't fucking know what she's talking about. This is lunacy, and I will stay polite. She doesn't know the concept. And I will end on this. Those tall buildings, skyscraper, that they will say it will be more dense, it will not take too much space. It doesn't work if you don't have energy. How you go to the 100th floor without an elevator? It is so stupid. And this architect David Orbach, he deconstruct all the Agenda 2030. That was in 2009. I still have the presentation. It is astonishing how those people are stupid. Olivia Chow, it's the same league as Elizabeth May or Melania Jolie. Melanie Jolie, not Melania.
Yeah, but I support Melanie Jolie. At least she looks pretty. If our politicians are all going to be dumb, at least I'd rather vote for one that's pretty to look at.
Well, we just
come on. Who disagrees with my argument?
Here wants more attractive politicians.
Well, you know, Annalena Baerbock, she was. I will say, okay, she was an escort at the World Economic Forum 25 years ago. Now they have to recycle her, so she's a senior advisor at the United Nations after being the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Germany. That's a very good career on your resume. It will be very well.
I'd like to say she's performed a better public service before she went to office.
Most probably, at least it is paid by you with your taxes.
Consenting, yes, consent to the government.
What was her name again? I should check. What's her only grand's address?
You mean only grand? Yes. What were the other topics that you wanted to? Because Brookfield is just that. I think Sushi nails it all the time with Brookfield.
No, it's just a joke. It's not even something new I brought up. Sue might have brought it up in her space. This concept of rather than excelling and progressing and having more access to more than whatever your parents had, they're like, why don't you downsize? Like, wait a minute, I thought this was the West. I thought we were a developed nation. You want me to downsize from an actual home to a Tupperware container home?
Yeah, but you have
grown the population. It's all the agenda.
You have too much equity in your home. Did Carney not say that 3 weeks ago? You have too much equity in your home. You have to share that with others who don't have it, and we'll do that. We'll do it for you. Well, that's the unrealized capital gains tax. You have so now the population in Canada that has the largest potential capital gains, those who own a home, are to some degree or other be required to cough up a significant purchase of the value of that equity in the form of a tax, because you're not socialist enough, because you're capitalist, you dirty capitalist, you own your home.
Well, you know what you're mentioning, it's if it was an heritage, you say, I will leave the money to my children when we will sell the house or they will inherit the house. Now it's not that. It's the government who's depriving you from your private property. Yes,
yeah, it's your children are colonizers just like you. You are
of course.
They don't. It's
2 years ago it was a advertisement from the Quebec government about energy. Hydro-Quebec was proposing to sell. They give you for free smart thermostat. Do you remember 2023 when there was a big problem with the California grid? People, they had smart thermostat in their house. They arrive, it's 36 degrees outside, and they cannot fix the thermostat because it is hacked by the grid, and they put the air conditioning off. They smart meter, smart thermostat everywhere. And in Quebec, they had advertising the fact that you should lower the temperature to 19 degrees, to 18 degrees during the night. And people were reacting. In Quebec, they're very emotional. They were reacting. Says, "Go fuck yourself. I will heat my fireplace, my stove. You can shove it, and I will never install that." It is backfired because they say, "What will be next? Pets." You're not allowed to have a pet. Klaus Schwab was talking about euthanizing all domestic pets, and says, "What's next? What's next?" They're so stupid. We can see it, but you still have a lot. Let's say 35% of the population, all those liberals that voted for those lunacy. It's incredible. It's incredible. It works. It works.
I'm going back. I'm looking for a comment that Sue made, but she's made a good observation. If you bring in Muslims, and I'm not saying this might happen, and Muslims don't like dogs, and they're introducing these laws that you shouldn't have a dog in this community. And she said that's where you're going to get a revolution.
Yes. Well, you won't get a revolution if you've tagged your dog and your dog is found to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, and it's removed from you, or actually, let's go in another direction. Let's add PETA as anti-pet. Why not give them some money and have them market toward anti-pet, because now you're just oppressing pets, because that conversation has shown up sometimes.
That's right? Good. Canadians won't give up their dogs or pickup, and I can guarantee you, you can come and take my dog. I have 2 Doberman and 1 pit bull.
But what happens when I have more Canadians who don't have dogs because I bring them in and their culture does not culturally have pets? Gaddafi's right. He says, we're going to take over Europe and we won't have to fire a shot.
We'll just outbreed you all. Yes.
We'll just outbreed you all. So, I mean, so much for integration.
That doesn't work. It's not integration.
It doesn't work. It doesn't work. And eventually this is going to end up in a great, big, massive clusterfuck. And everybody's going to be mad at everybody else. And it won't be people throwing cream pies at each other.
So Canada, he's making a joke, or maybe he's serious. Kim Jong-un took the dogs away because everybody was eating the dogs.
Well, it is not a joke. During the blockade of Leningrad in 1941, 1943, 2 years of blockade, they were eating animals. They were starving.
Yeah.
Where is humanity when we arrive at the situation when they threat you in your own existence? Whether it is.
Respond to the melting pot worked comment. The melting pot did not work if you were on the southern states along the Gulf of Mexico or Mexico proper, because the number of employers and landlords and educators, post-secondary, that took advantage of cash under the table relationships with their employees. Illegals were quiet and the employers were complicit. The melting pot concept only works when the home team plays above board. And that's most of the problem with Canada right now, particularly in Southern Ontario and in Vancouver, where employers are taking advantage of Canadian government subsidies for temporary foreign workers and temporary foreign students. And employers are using those subsidies to save a buck, knowing that they're not hiring Canadian citizens.
I would just say the quota is just way too high. Like, yes, you're right. The businesses are abusing it, but the government should have never set the rate of immigration so high.
If I'm bringing in qualified, employable people from other countries and I have to subsidize a fucking job, I'm doing it wrong.
Well, Tim, and honestly, Payment, I disagree about the government. The government should not be in this at all. That's the first thing. The second thing is what Tim is mentioning: black money and with no moral code. The fact that those people take advantage of everything, including immigrants who are arriving. And my wife, she's in contact because she's Russian, Soviet Union, whatever you call her, and she's in contact. It's the same phenomenon in Russia with Tajikistan people. The diaspora there, they're taking advantage of Tajik people everywhere in Russia, up to a point where they start to hire Tajik people in local business, police, municipal worker, and they take the country slowly. Strangely, it is Muslim country. Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan. When you see Russian people who want to re-immigrate to Russia, they have so hard time going back that they just drop off. So look at what is happening here.
I'll tell a funny story.
A lot of people, they arrive here and they are a victim of those people who take advantage of the system for their self-interest or for political purpose.
No,
That's
I
another.
agree. I agree with you that I'm not going to disagree with the victim thing, but I don't even leave the house anymore because anywhere I go, the vendor is bound to be Iranian, and I hate talking to them. They see me, they recognize me, they start speaking to me in Farsi, and I can't really speak Farsi. And in English, you say like "venti cappuccino, thanks," and you move on. In Farsi, it's like "good day, citizen. How goes fortune? Does fortune smile upon?" Like it just goes on and on and on. I'm just like, just make my goddamn coffee, man, and I'll pay you, and just let me go and be miserable on my own.
Yeah. So as much as Canadian people are frustrated and don't know what to do, chances are your neighbor, if he's an employer, is using your taxpayer money, converted into a wage subsidy for temporary foreign workers and temporary foreign students to hire those students and those workers instead of your son or your daughter who go to the same school as your neighbor who is the employer.
That's
This
the replacement, the great replacement theory.
they are literally guaranteeing their expulsion from their own country. And look at Tim Hortons. Quality has gone completely in the tank.
Oh,
Why?
you can't eat there. You just can't.
Why? Because the employer has abused these temporary foreign workers and temporary foreign students because the caste system is alive and well. And that's a fact. When in the Southern Ontario, what's that town that begins with the word B? Brampton, which shows up in the news every now and then. So you have
Brampton.
So you have foreign students and foreign temporary workers who will go and they will be they owe a Canadian consulting company money for bringing them over here and doing the work for them. They owe the person who housed them when they first came over here, which is probably their existing landlord, which is probably also their employer, which may even be related to the cousin of their educator. You've created an indentured servant class out of your own culture. And then when the townspeople are in an uproar and they say this is wrong, that we can't have a system like this because you're taking the ground level of a house and you with 2 bedrooms in it and you got 10 people living in it. You can't do this in our neighborhoods. And then all of a sudden the seniors of that particular demographic are marching and holding up signs and saying, we're being abused. You're racist, you bigot, you're preventing us from practicing our culture. I'm like, fuck off.
Well,
no.
I think Tim,
everybody who signs a check to these people is responsible.
Tim, I think people are starting to see it. It is visible in a sense. It will still take time for people to react and to be able to act also. It's very difficult to see how your neighborhood is changing, but how do you react? How do you act, with and staying, peaceful? We see it everywhere now in Canada. Is it possible to react peacefully? Most of the time, yes, but you always have some extreme reaction, and this maybe those reaction. Payment, you were mentioning the criminality is rising, so people are not safe anymore. But think about women in France now. It's starting to be very hard. In Sweden now they're putting a moratorium on immigration because they say, wait a second, it's not about Muslim people. It's because women, they say, wait, we are not safe anymore. What we used to consider a safe place, now it's not safe, and it's now it's in big cities, okay, but it's spreading slowly.
Let me tie it all together. Canada making a joke. He's talking about people defecating on the street. My prediction is that the next election, assuming we have one, it's not going to be just crime that's on the rise. I think it's going to be homelessness, and it's going to be the economic the factor that people are desperate. That's why we have crime. And I think people won't be able to ignore it anymore. The example I gave about Iran, where they're mugging and stabbing people, that's going to be coming to the forefront. I'm in a very, very affluent neighborhood. I went out the other day to get food in the shopping mall. There was a homeless person sleeping on the bench. And then I went around behind the building. There was somebody doing the fentanyl dance, the crouch down thing. I had never, ever in my life seen somebody do hard narcotics in the open in this community before.
Well, a couple of weeks ago, I wrote an article called "The Canadian Perestroika," and why I refer to that is because I was astonished by the demography in Russia and the expectancy of life. How people were, in 1994, the expectancy of life for a man was 59 years old, and for a woman 63. And what we could analyze now, since 2020 with the COVID crisis, and what is happening now with the fentanyl crisis, and you can put everything you want on it. We could see the cancer. We could try to analyze the demography of Canada on a long term, and the tendency. In statistics, you draw a graph and you try to see the tendency. I would be surprised. I would be curious to see the tendency, because the expectancy of life in Canada usually, it's about 75 years, 78 years for a man, 82 years for a woman, and an average. It depends on if you live in a city or more countryside, depending on the type of work you have, your education. But if we would look at the tendency, maybe we would see the demography. We would have some indicators that would show us what would happen in the next 2-3 years. Immigration can mask the problem.
Man, Tim, so just real quick, the election day live stream that the three of us did, yes. What that gentleman, Jayant Bhandari, said, it's just shocked me. Yes. It's stuck with me that he said it might just be over. It's too late. There's just too many immigrants here.
It's possible.
Well, I said it last week. We're in free fall now. And like I said at the beginning of this show, it depends whether we land in the cataphract of the waterfalls, in which case we're done, or will we go out far enough from the falls that we land in the calmer water over on the other side,
and then drown.
And if you end up concussed, you're screwed, right? No, we're in free fall. We are absolutely in free fall, and I think this is Sue will get a kick out of this. Stop, drop, and roll. Tuck and cover. Duck and cover. Get under your desk, children. It'll be okay, right? This
earthquake.
Love your family. I mean, that's supposed to be an encouragement, but now it's like it's an act of was it an act of survival?
Well, that's why I was referring Tim to eschatology at the end of time, and I'm not predicting this. I'm saying let's be prepared for something that is historic, and let's preparing the crisis doesn't mean that you want it. Preparing the crisis, you make the best out of it. I used to do emergency program at Hydro-Quebec, and the senior manager, they were always telling me, "Hi, management, why are you doing this? We don't need this." I said, "You're managing water dam with millions of people around that. If it breaks, the dam breaks, you need an emergency plan. We have to rehearse, and we have to make sure that we're ready. We will never be totally ready. But the importance to prepare ourselves to something that will change the face of the country for better or worse. It's like when you get married, for better or worse."
Yeah, mostly usually for the worst. Somebody else.
Let me. I want to go back. Sorry, what Sue said. We always win. No, we don't. No, Sue says we don't. History disagrees. Most of us die. Most humans die unknown, miserable, hungry, and sick. That's human. We don't always win. And I think until we have a realistic approach and realize that we have to dig in and do hard stuff, not just to protect the Europeanness of our culture or our heritage, but also the people from other nations and other peoples who have been with us for 160 plus years. They're here already, right? They are here with us. They had the same dream, right? So the Chinese who came over to with the railroads and all that stuff, they're part of us, right? The Indians who came over, like here in the valley in southern Ontario, they're part of us. I mean, I can even accept that the Dutch are part of us, I suppose, right? Right. So, but all of these, right? The South Africans and West Africans, right? Right. They're part. They have been part of us. This, what's happening now that turns us into a bunch of angry white supremacists is that there are those who are turning that tap on so fast and so big a gape, right? That there's nothing, that everybody is underneath stress, right? Everybody is underneath stress, and it's too much, and it's too much. And this is what I'm going to use the they, right? This is what they want. They want stress. They want, because our quote unquote white supremacist behavior, that we are bad whitey or whatever, that we are colonizers, will prove them right in their propaganda, right? We will prove their propaganda right. And perception is reality. So the only way around it is those of us are here, unite among. I don't. If you're a third generation India, third, fourth generation Pakistani, second generation Iranian, right, or wherever you're from, then be Canadian and understand that we are being driven by outside forces to implode. And everyone will suffer. Every single person coming over from Air Amritsar, right, and landing in Surrey or landing in, I keep forgetting the name again, Ontario. Brampton. I don't know why I keep forgetting it. Every single one of those new citizens that are coming in are being taken advantage of also. And out of them are those among us already who are taking advantage financially, taking advantage culturally, and the moment we raise our voices against this, we are racist.
Well, what you're mentioning, you said something. You said most of us die.
True.
But was that a general statement? Because if it is true, I would like you to point me who doesn't die.
Who lives forever?
Yeah. Who lives forever? That's the
my comment when someone says to me, "But in the end, we win." My immediate response is, if indeed they win, I won't be there because I will be one of the ones that die.
Okay,
and if I don't die from natural causes, right, or get run over by a bus or something, then I will die because I got myself into an Arthur Pawlowski circumstance that went terribly wrong.
Okay, I was just teasing you, Tim. The other thing is, you mentioned that a lot of people are victim of abusive government. Can we transform the victim into warriors?
Sure, we can.
Okay, sure, let's do that.
Now you're just
not giving up.
Now you're just being a pain in the ass. No, we don't always win, because I'll be dead before we win. So I don't consider that winning. I don't look 3 generations down the road and consider that winning. I have 4 adult children. I have a granddaughter. I have 2 brothers and 2 sisters, and they have children. I don't consider them dying to this current garbage and then their grandchildren winning. That's not a win for me. Winning is me waking up tomorrow knowing that my government got its shit sorted out and those who deserve justice found the rope on the right end.
Tim, you're taking the bait.
You bet your butts I'm taking the bait. The government, the day is coming very soon when there will be no bread to feed our children. Will their parents revolt then?
I think they will. I'm not sure how it will end. That's maybe a concern when you think about what the concept of civil war. you see it in many countries now. There's a lot of people who are talking about civil war. Rational people are talking about civil war in France. So you know what happened last week in Los Angeles? It spread to the entire United States, and the Democrat. You know, there was a congressman who was arrested by the police because he was promoting violence. So you know, we are on the edge of something that can happen.
Let me mention that
we have to cool off the temper of people.
It wasn't a congressman; it was a senator. And whatever, they arrested it. Andrew Coyne, that swamp creature, he's like, this is terrible. I can't believe it. This is Trump's America. And someone's like, I'm sorry, did you say anything when Maxime Bernier got arrested?
Yes, but you know, those people, you know what is funny? The more you let them speak, the more they look stupid and the more they lose credibility. That's why sometimes social media is very dangerous, because we're all subject to have emotions and we can react too fast. But you have some people, you just give them rope and you wait. They will hang themselves with well, it's more complicated than that.
No, it's not complicated. Andy Coyne is Canadian with TDS.
No, it's because he made a comment about France is a Muslim country. I have other thoughts about this that I will not share today. France.
France has danced with that for a long time because of the relationship with the Arabian peoples goes back 400 or 500 years.
Well, with the more but not only that. So the French Revolution was not really a revolution. It was bloody, but it was either staged or organized, and not necessarily by the people. It was not for the purpose of bourgeoisie.
Does anybody know what Sue's talking about? What happened in Minnesota?
By the two congressmen were murdered. It was two Democrat congressmen. I don't remember the name. I was just reading it before. They were murdered 3 days ago, I think, and they are Democrats. And strangely, they voted against a bill that was proposed by the Democrats, so it made a very big scandal in the United States. That's the only thing I know about it. Don't ask me more details. That was just
So we're 3 hours late on breaking news, which means we'll probably forget it by next week.
Well, breaking news.
Yeah.
You want to replace Fox News? At least I
would replace CNN News if there was a frickin' paycheck involved.
There's nothing to replace with CNN. There's nothing to replace, but maybe we can compete with Rebel News.
I mean, my new fun phrase to troll people, conservative voters on X now is defund the CPC.
Well, okay, it has shift now, because when they were talking about defund the CBC, I said prosecute the CBC, so that would be
the Conservative Party of Canada, CPC. I'm using a pun. Defund the CPC. Yeah, this is horrific, and if it is actually attached to somebody from Tim Walz's, it just boggles the mind.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is the guy that killed him?
Yes. I don't know if they did they? I don't know. I just all I know is
Vance Luther Bolter was a North African consultant, American citizen. That he's a suspect. He's not.
So the picture of this fella here, I mean, he looks like he might give himself a permanent he looks like the kind of guy who cuts himself opening his own beer.
Well,
wait, I might be continuing.
You know what's shocking about something like this, and I was feeling this since a couple of years, is the fact that you have some members of parliament, congressmen, public servant who can be targeted for political purpose. That's maybe more concerning.
Yeah.
The only thing I can think of is the Patriot Act. They sent anthrax to those two senators.
Well, there was a Secret Service. There was a Secret Service retired agent in France, Eric Denessé, who was discovered in his apartment. He was 62. Me, I was following him. He was not sick, and he was from the Secret Services of France. And they discovered him last week, dead. 62, no illness, nothing. His family says that he's not suicidal. So there's very something strange. In France, you saw that. We have to pay attention to those people who are public character and who are maybe not aligned with the official narrative.
What was the cause of death? Was it climate change?
They don't know. They did not disclose it yet. They don't know. There's an inquiry, so
But everybody knows it couldn't be suicide, because if it was suicide, he'd have been shot twice in the back of the head.
With two different guns.
Right?
Oh, it's easy. You take a mirror, you shoot in the mirror, and
right.
You shoot your double.
Yeah.
You shoot your double. But you have some strange things that are happening, and overall, you have those sad events about the attack in Iran and the retaliation in Israel.
So how are you going to ask them? I want to.
Oh, she can ask.
I want to
Doesn't mean that they will answer.
How do you plan on presenting your query, your request? You're going to write them a letter? I'll just jump forward to the part where you say that they actually pick up whatever means you communicate this with, and say that they either hit delete or with a match burnt it into their round bin.
No, Tim, I can tell you what happens.
They've been paid to lie. That's not inaccurate. Is no more inaccurate than Winston Smith in 1984, who simply changed the hero's letter or story he wrote the week before and turned him into the villain that was gunned down for betraying the party the week after. They're doing what they're paid to do. You can ask.
Yeah. I was going to say, she sends off a fax, and the fax machine is right in front of the garbage bin. So all the requests just go straight into the garbage.
Shredding machine. You have to get rid of the evidence.
Yeah. Right into the shredder. Andre had said this before. The CBC is effectively Russia's or our version of Provost.
The Pravda.
Thank you.
It is interesting. It is interesting that what you're mentioning, because now I'm writing an article. I hope I will finish it for next week. The title is the Canadian Stasi.
Canadian
Stasi. The East Germany Secret Services.
Yeah.
I advise you to watch a movie which is called The Life of Others. And it's about people who are spying on dissident in East Germany. The movie is incredible, and the way the person who's spying on those citizens start to change his mind slowly about what is happening in his own country, and that was the Stasi. The Stasi, which was the Secret Service, or the state police in which Angela Merkel was part of the Stasi.
What?
She was part of the Stasi. Angela Merkel, she was a Secret Services agent, just like Vladimir Putin was part of the KGB. They knew each other. Yeah. They knew each other. Angela Merkel, she speaks perfectly Russian, and they knew each other for many, many years. That's why he was shocked, or was he shocked? I don't know, but he was shocked to discover that the Minsk agreement were just a fake, so they can rearm Ukraine. That's common knowledge today. It's quite.
So Merkel was East
German. A communist. What?
Merkel was East German.
Merkel was East German. Yes.
I was this many years old when I learned something new.
Well, You know, when you look at this and you understand where they come from, I refer to Annalena Baerbock. Annalena Baerbock, her grandfather was part of the German SS. Kaja Kallas, who's the major diplomat in Estonia, her grandfather was a sympathizer of the Nazi. Ursula von der Leyen, you have a lot. The pedigree is very long. When you try to find, Christian, a Canadian version of it, Christian Freeland, with her grandfather was writing for a newspaper in Galicia, a Nazi sympathizer and a collaborator with Bandera. You have it. It's every day. Everything is there. You don't have to go to conspiracy theory. You just have to follow the genealogy of people, and you will understand a lot of things of what is happening today. The way they behave, Baerbock, von der Leyen, the way they behave, that's interesting. Maybe next time we do the biography of
Pierre
Trudeau and Justin Trudeau.
Tim, are you getting blood pressure problems yet?
Let me check.
We should probably wind this down. This show ended a long time ago.
My heart rate is currently 97. So, you know, that's better than the normal 110.
So she's not. So
Pushing blood pressure completely wound up. Yeah.
In wrapping up this show, Sue, do you have any final words for us?
No, don't give her the last word. Damn it. This is my show. She's got her own show.
Clash of the shows.
Let's Sue invite you to her show.
Oh, can you imagine?
I want to see this. I'm willing to pay for that. I'm willing to pay.
Talking over each other for 4 hours.
All right. Well,
we both slip into Newfoundland accents, and nobody would know what we were saying.
Just making fun of
you
the
will live.
Newfoundland.
Yes.
You will live. Great words to end on. I don't know. I guess big thank you to the audience, to my co-hosts.
Especially a Saturday afternoon when they can mow their lawn.
Let's
and
be
hug
clear.
your children, make them wonder what you're up to.
Canadians, they can't afford a home with a lawn. They can't even afford a lawnmower.
So they watch our show.
Yeah. All right, guys. Take care. Goodbye, everyone.
So when the audience will go down, it means that they can buy a lawnmower.
Yes. Hopefully we'll fix the economy, and or I don't know, Carney can give a free lawnmower to everyone.
A confession: we have an electric lawnmower.
That's what I was.
Oh. Let me just remove you from your tile. Thanks a lot, News Noise Inc. Try saying that fast 3 times.
Right. All right. Go away. I'm hungry. I need to eat.
Yeah, same here. All right, guys. We got to go eat. Take care. Goodbye. Enjoy your weekend.
Good
See you next
weekend.
Saturday. Bye-bye.